We are on the Country versus Metal podcast with Christopher Seymore. How are you, sir?
Doing well, brother. I'm doing well. Just hanging out in ye old Texas. So
Yeah,
weather's
you're.
the weather's perfect here, by the way. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's raining here, which means my dog is doing all his business inside today.
Oh, is he an older guy, your dog?
No, he's a wiener dog, so they're very stubborn.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, any kind of hound, man. You know,
Yeah,
they're just they're their own people, you know?
yeah, yeah. Hopefully he doesn't hear that because he's already stuck up enough. But
Man,
yeah,
it's good to
oh
be here, man.
yeah, dude, it was really cool. I googled your name today and some pictures showed up, and I was like, damn, this dude's got style.
Thanks, man.
It was like the first time. I don't know. Do you know who Jim Root is from Slipknot?
Yeah.
The first time I'd really seen him without a mask on, I was like, oh wow, I did not expect such a very sophisticated look on him, and it's he has like the hair and the beard and the tattoos, and I was like, that was like the second time I've had that moment where I was like, man, like when you walk into a place, they definitely know you're an artist. I walk into somewhere and they're like, if you want to use the bathroom, you gotta buy something. But
Man, I appreciate that. You know, I it's if people say I don't look country enough, you know, I get that from time to time. I
really,
know. Yeah. Yeah, they're like, man, you just don't look country to me. I was like, well, I grew up in the middle of nowhere and we only wore shoes on Sunday in the summer. So, you know, I don't know what to tell you, So, but yeah, man, yeah, I don't know, like it's you just start getting tattoos at some point, and then you don't stop. I think it's you know they used to have to mean something when I first started getting them. I was like, it's got to be something deep and meaningful and part of my story. And then after a while, I was like, you know what, I kind of like that. I'll just get that, out of my buddy's flash book or whatever. So they stopped taking on such monumental meaning. I think maybe that's most things in life. The older you get, you're like, well, what does that really account for?
yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah. I get that. Like a lot of people always ask me, or a lot of my friends, they're like, how come you don't have any tattoos? And I was just like, man, I don't like anything too permanent. Like, but then again, like if things permanent, like I moved quite a bit when not a lot, like in like a small area, and I hate moving. I like
Yeah.
that kind of like permanency because like I hate putting everything in a box, and
Moving
it's
sucks. It
yeah,
sucks. This sucks.
that's why I don't have a pickup truck. Once you get a pickup truck, everybody that you know needs to move or needs to go to Home Depot to pick up stuff, and it's just like like
See? That's why I have a big ass van. Nobody asks you for the truck stuff, but you get the
yeah,
same utility. It's wonderful.
yeah,
It's life hack. No, also maybe I just outed every guy with a big van right now, or every person with a big van. It's like now people are going to start asking them to move shit for them. And the answer is no, I will not do that.
yeah.
I'll stand there and watch and drive it from one place to the other. You
Yeah, yeah, I've been the victim of one of them, or like, hey, I got all this free furniture. I'm just not going to move it, and then you get there, and it's from like Brazil. It's all hand carved, and it weighs 1,500 pounds, and
Yeah.
you're like, yeah,
Anything
not worth it.
somebody's not willing to move out of their place, you probably don't want to have to move to yours.
Yeah,
It's like always the shitty stuff, like that thing that doesn't quite fit through a hallway, or you know, a 400-pound armoire. Yeah, it's always like something solid and heinous to carry. So
yeah, yeah. My one buddy, he got me. He was like, at the time I had a CDL, and he's like, "You have a CDL, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." Why? He goes, I need you to drive. I need you to drive a moving truck." And I'm like, "Okay." And next thing you know, like we're on a train, and I'm like, "Where are we going?" He's like, "Times Square." I said, "I have to drive a moving truck through Times Square," and it was the worst experience ever. It was like I don't know if the graffiti was on there before or like during or after. I just remember being like, "Dude, did this just get tagged?" Like,
Was this there yesterday? Nobody's tagged my van in New York yet, so
no,
not yet. Not yet. I've been up there a few times and we'll probably go back at like the end of the summer, you know. I love playing up there, man. Like they got a cool like underground honky tonk scene in Brooklyn and
yeah,
Queens, and like people don't even realize that it exists, you know. And I mean, a New York crowd treats you different than anywhere else on the planet, I think. So, yeah, man, I love going up there, but nobody's tagged it yet. Nobody's got a hold of Meemaw yet and tagged out their thing on there, you know. So she's just
that's
waiting, New York. Next time I go up, I expect somebody to tag that, you know.
that's great. That's like
I'll
because
leave it
you're
on there. I swear to God, just don't make it a penis. You know, I don't know how to. I don't know how to explain that to my mother. You know,
that's funny. So because you're from what, North or South Carolina?
I grew up in South Carolina mostly, but yeah, I went to high school in North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, and then lived a bunch of different places. But I've been in Texas for 11 years now. So well, 11 years in April. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
man, I
cool.
love it here. It's nice. You know, especially this time of year. It's just the weather's perfect. That's why I moved here. You know,
The
winter,
weather.
fall, spring, and then there's that season in the middle called hell. That's just it's like 106 and more humid than anywhere else on the planet. It feels like, you know. So
Yeah,
it has its trade offs, but I'll take the payoff. Yeah,
it, it's
I can
it's
always go
funny.
swimming in the summer. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the last time in Texas, I was looking around at the sky, and I was like, "This should be a good day." I I was hoping to just make. I was hoping it wasn't going to rain today, and they were like, "Rain? Where the hell are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm from Delaware." And they're like, "We ain't got no rain." I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right." So we have seasons up here in the Northeast, which
Well, see, Houston, East Texas is a little different. You know, East and Central can be pretty different. Over here in Houston, where I've lived mostly, you know, the last 11 years, uh, it's a subtropic, so it's about 80 to 90% humidity. We get a lot of rain. We get flooding here. It's big old swamp. West Houston was all just swamp at one point. That's why they moved the capital to Austin. You could lose a team of horses in the mud in Houston. So
yeah,
uh, yeah, it's kind of a little different microcosm. It's more Gulf Coast than, you know. So you're what, 5.5 hours from New Orleans, just dead east on 10. So it's just like a little microcosm, in Texas it's just a little different. And then Austin's a lot drier, but still it'll be 109 and humid in Austin. So yeah, it's just hot in Texas.
yeah,
It's hot
yeah.
as hell.
Yeah, it was pretty hot when I was down there. Talbo asked if you could center your video a little bit better. He's still producing a little bit. There we
Bam.
go.
How's that? Ask
Ah,
Steve if that's good.
yeah, he'll let me know. But yep, now people get the total picture
That's
of the
it, man. You
style.
get to see the other side of the fridge now. That makes all the difference, you know.
But dude, like when I was looking at that picture, and I was like, "Dude, I love the hair." And then you had a hat on your chest, and I was like, "Don't you dare!" You know, like,
That's my buddy Ben made that hat. Ben Kinnemer. They do like all this uh, wild western wear fashion stuff, and they're just like him and Bonnie. They're based out of Austin, but yeah, they were just up. They just got featured in Vogue and all this stuff. That's I'll wear his hats because he's my boy. You know, I knew when he started making those like a decade ago. You know, and so Yeah, I'll wear his hats, but generally, man, I just don't. I like to put, though, if I'm going fishing or something, got to throw a ball cap on.
Yeah.
Sun exposure is a motherfucker, so.
Yeah.
And I'm pale as hell, so. Was not made for the sun, my friend.
Yeah.
But man, it's I don't know. I like we talk. Went back and listened through a bunch of episodes. I listened to BJ, the American Aquarium BJ episode, and man, I'm such a fan of that guy now. Like you talk about like a genuine, like just a genuine artist, great songwriter, and he was talking about like that evolution of going from like young man wild in the bar to like when you start to get a little older and your parents age and you start losing people and you watch yourself age in the mirror and your priorities start to change and who you are starts to change a little. And I think that's interesting, man. I find it very hard to find that place to write in sometimes. I mean, I'm a traditionalist in a lot of ways with what I do, but you, like songwriting is songwriting, man. It's about that human experience. And that's what, like, those real, honest emotions that we connect to, those snapshots of life that like connect us to the bigger thing. And I think he talked a lot about that in that episode, and I thought, man, it's right on the head of like why it's hard to evolve as an artist and grow your perspective and learn to talk about something new and different.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because I have 2 albums recorded and that exists in a different encapsulated point in time than where I'm at currently. So it's like also you're singing songs on, when you reach being my age, you've been writing songs for 20 years, 15 years plus. And so you're singing the same songs with a different perspective, a different connection point to those things. So I was like, I thought that was really interesting, man, that you guys got into that, like that and the connection to like who the community is as a performer. That was very inspiring, man.
Yeah.
Just to hear him talk about that.
Yeah. That was my first experience with the whole scene of like hearing like country music that actually has, feelings and like just very emotive songs. And then like I'd
Yeah,
never been in a room where an artist could just break people like that and everybody was just having a moment, and I was just like, wow, man. Like, because I never really listened to music like that. Like listening to heavy music is like cool when you're driving, you're like, yeah, or like you're
yeah,
working out, and to get another side, because like I love like reading poetry, and I most of my books are all nonfiction, they're all biographies, and I love stories and like real
real
and
story.
honest.
Yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, he really, that was definitely like a really cool like masterclass, because I told him I was like, I haven't really sat down and did a whole album front to back, and it was like I understood his Instagram because I follow him on Instagram and we're Facebook friends, and everything made sense. And he goes, "That's what happens when it's one guy writing the songs about stuff that's going on with my life. It's a snapshot, a yearbook of my life." It was really cool how he broke it down, and it's yeah, like it was really cool. He made it sound so easy too. You know what I mean? In his way, he was like, and a lot of people can't put words to what they say in the context of music and making it enjoyable and listenable. And he's like, that's my superpower. I get to do that. And when you put that your song and his song out in the world, it can become something totally different to someone else. And he's like, it's not mine anymore. And it's really, like I've never heard someone be like, "Oh, that band Obituary, their music changed my life." You know what I mean? Like, I, it's cool to like understand and
well,
and
wasn't
enjoy it.
wasn't metal about emotion,
I don't know. Like I'd heard
or
that
is it about math, or is it like I guess it just depends on what you're looking at, right? And
yeah,
that's your background, right? Is metal.
yeah. growing up, the only like older stuff, my dad, it's like Leonard Skinner. That's probably the
Yeah,
closest I got to country. Like he went to the
Southern rock.
funerals. Yeah. And he did dabble in some Molly Hatchet, but
Yeah, yeah.
my mom was like she liked Madonna and David Bowie and Steve
Ah,
Martin. We used to listen to
and
Steve
Steve
Martin.
Martin.
You know,
The,
how can you
the
be upset when you hear the banjo?
Something
Let's
about banjo just resonates in my soul. You know, it's like
yeah. That
that.
album, Let's Get Small. She used to listen to that all the time, and a lot of times it was classical music. My mom would put classical music on and tell a story. She would make up
Wow.
these wild stories. And she'd be like, "Oh, there's dinosaurs running across the road," and you know, and it was cool. But like, my dad took me to a Metallica concert, and it was just like, all right, that's what I want to do. I was like,
Well, I hope I don't out a cousin or two here to my mother and my father, who will probably never see this podcast. They probably will not. But yeah, my first like real rock show was Guns N' Roses Metallica.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
they
was my
actually played
first.
because I
They
know
actually played. I was like 12 years old, and I saw them.
that's awesome.
And my cousin was like, "You could never tell anybody," but I have. I just did it now. I told a whole bunch. Sorry, guys. I
Yeah,
don't. I mean, they're like, so nobody's gonna get on us now, about it. But
yeah.
they're like, tell people you're my son, kind of thing. Trying to hit on girls. But
That's
but
funny.
it's like it's. I think, man, it's the thing about like what BJ does that I really love as a songwriter is that he encapsulates that like honest emotion of the moment, right? What he's experiencing. That's way vulnerable. I have a hard time being so directly biographical when I write, even though everything I've ever written is all about me. Uh, I think, well, anything good I've ever written is all about me. Because I would say that like at some point, I used to write for other people and I used to emulate a lot. I would try to pattern myself after whatever artist that I was obsessed with at the time. And at some point, you glean enough tools that they start to become your own voice. But I think with oh man, I lost my thought. There you go. That's it right there. I think with BJ's writing, the ability to just be candid about himself in that way is really that's devastatingly honest. you know like I always hide it in a story, but the feeling that's there is my real feeling. I put it out there for people to see, but with him, he's giving you the honest thing, the real name. It's like the memoirs with real names, right? They just
Yeah,
hit a little harder because you're actually tying it there to that actual moment, to that actual person, to the actual person that you honestly were, which sometimes later in life, I think maybe you're not as proud of that person that wrote that song at that time and was doing those things. And I can't speak for BJ, obviously, but like I know for myself, I can find moments where it's like that connection point to where you're at when you're making the thing into where you're at now and who you become. That that's a different person, you know?
yeah,
And then that's the part of this hard about reconciling getting older and things changing and like your parents are like, hey, can you come do all the stuff that requires a ladder at the house? And you're like, okay, yeah, I can do that. But it's like a little weird that my old man's not just taking his life into his own hands on a 12 to 20 foot ladder. you know so it's the change, and who I am, it's not taking the chances that I used to take too. So I think that's kind of, it's interesting, and it's like it's hard to put yourself in the place of now to write, and that's why I find what he does so, just so crazy, man. Like it's
yeah,
wild.
yeah. American Aquarium is definitely one of those. And like I even told him like when someone's like, "Hey, you need to check out American Aquarium," and I saw the name, and I didn't get it. I was kind of like,
Yeah,
"All right,
yeah.
man." I was like, "Well, blah blah," and then I listened to it, and I was like, "Man, I made a huge mistake of, like, who am I to be like, oh, the name, and then you hear these songs, it's just like, but like you said, like, I love the fact that even as an artist yourself, you can hear a song and be like, man, why was I making a big deal about that? And I find that like in my own growing up, like things that you would get so mad about, like even like just say like in traffic,
Right.
if somebody does something to you, and
I
and
never
then you're
get
like,
mad in traffic now at all.
yeah, it's not worth it. You know what I mean? And when somebody says something to you, and I always heard one of my favorite comedians, Doug Stanhope, he said, "Why would
Yeah, I
I?"
love that stand-up.
Oh, like I don't get starstruck. I don't ever want to meet celebrities, but he is definitely one of them. And he
He's
just,
like kind of a modern day George Carlin.
dude, exactly. Thank
You
you.
know,
And
just
it's
saying.
you're the first person I ever brought him up randomly and was like, I love that guy. And yeah,
Well, he's a
so
misanthrope, and you got to have a special love for the misanthrope in life,
yeah. And he just said, well, why would I be mad at you? It's a sound you can make with your mouth. If you were speaking Chinese, calling me the biggest, jerk ever, I would have no idea because he's like, oh, okay. And that
Yeah.
made so much sense to me. And I always try to like make sure when people get mad about something, I'm like, dude, it's just sound. That's all it is. If they were talking Spanish, Japanese, Mandarin, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't care. You just be like, whatever, and just shrug it off. Like the little things that used to bother, like if you get served the wrong food at a restaurant and you blow up, like
I
there's
would never
different.
do.
Oh, dude, I don't ever mess with people that make my
Nah,
food.
man, I've served food before. I worked in service at one point in my life, and I'll tell you, man, I wouldn't fuck with them people.
No, that movie Waiting is
Yeah.
100% genuine. That is how it works.
Yeah, man, if anybody has ever worked a service job, that movie is for real, man.
Absolutely.
It captures kitchen culture to a T too. It's like front of house, back of house, like, I don't know, man. You just the people who take care of you in your life, how you treat them, that says everything about who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Like it's like, man, you're in a restaurant. I always said though it's different. I bartended a good bit, and I also served tables, and uh, I've done a lot of different jobs in my life, many, 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 many different jobs, but 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 bartending, you always held the spigot to the liquor, you know, and they're coming to you. Okay, they come to the bar. They ask you to give them something, right? And you are the gatekeeper, man. You know, and then when you're a server, you're going to them. You're asking them what they want, and then you're bringing it to them. It's a totally different psychology. And I will tell you this: servers out there in the world, you don't get enough respect. You don't. You do a damn good job. And since 2020 came along and killed a lot of our restaurant industry, and everybody that had any kind of work experience went on to do something other than work in the service industry. Uh, I think, man, I miss all of you. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like the idea of a bar has changed, like waiting bar has changed. The music industry's changed. We lost so many mid-sized venues. It's hard for small music scenes to be thriving in places where they used to have a foothold. Like that 200 to 500 and below capacity venue. I think 2020 just it took a lot of them out of this world, boy.
Yeah.
It did.
It decimated. And like you said, like the good servers, they're hustlers. They got out that game and they went and did something else and they left the people. No offense to servers, they're just like, eh. All the good ones. And yeah, like there's venues like there used to be just small cap rooms and they had sound guys.
Yeah.
They had managers
I
specifically.
miss the audio engineers the most.
Oh my god, yeah. They knew what a digital press kit was. You'd be like, hey, send over my press kit, and look, well, oh yeah, yeah, and that you're getting somebody that has no idea about anything about music, and it's just it's a whole different game, and it's and you have to pay attention to that as a musician, and it's really hard because especially if you're so used to so ingrained. Like my buddy was like, I put out the emails that you would all the venues you would do. It's a standard template. Boom, 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 boom. Here's the kit. Here's our dates available. Come and nobody responded, and he took it like, man, I guess I'm done with music. I'm like, no, you're sending it to people. They don't know what that is. They downsized from, you know, the managers that just specifically did entertainment, whether it was the Quizzo, the the DJ nights and the bands. I said this is somebody that's probably doing the schedule for all the bartenders, bouncers, and servers, and
Yeah, yeah.
they don't know. And if they have a band that they like or somebody, that's what they're looking for. And I said it's not the people that really jump in and click and listen to the music, because those people they like music. That's why they were the entertainment thing. And I'm gonna get good music in here, and yeah, that
Man, it's
lost a
hard.
lot.
It's hard to make it. Like the numbers for the bar and the numbers for the musician, to make those things line up and do the things you want them to. It's difficult. It's difficult to because there's also the distinction between like, and in the music industry we talk a lot about gatekeeping, things like that, right? Or but you also have to balance that with curation, right? We as artists are at different points in our career. It's the mix of like keeping quality and allowing opportunity, right? Finding that balance between those things especially in a local scene, in a place that's not so well established. You go to Nashville, there's a scene there. They've been around for a long time. You go to Austin, I mean, you can be involved in one of the, I think, for especially for what we do in country music, like on the cutting edge of what like the genre can be and do, and like what people are doing as far as like just different, interesting. You know, you could be in New York or L.A. or any of these, Chicago, any of these bigger metropolitan hubs, but for a place like Houston or somewhere else where it's a little tougher, to like create a place for yourself. You just got to be an opportunity generator, and I think that's just like building the relationships, the personal relationships, which is what the music business is really about. It's not just about the idea of networking, like showing up and saying, "Hey, this guy is doing something. I'm going to go try to be a part of that." But it's also about building community around things, right? Because anytime something moves outside of just yourself into the greater concept of the community, that's when you make the biggest impact. Because it's about long-term cultural change as opposed to a short-term catapulting of one singular entity, right? And that's powerful. I think as a whole, because we have dancing culture here in Texas, like the two step is still very much alive, and then there's different iterations and movements of that, and you see that in New York or Nashville or L.A. or all these little places across like Texas and the rest of the country. Like even Asheville has a great like dance hall kind of night called Western Wednesdays at a place called the Double Crown, and the dancing culture connects the audience to the band in a different way. It's everybody's there together, everybody's on the same beat together, and that kind of concept, of community, where it is like everybody's entered into the same thing together. I think those things are powerful, and we lose sight of those in our modern social media thing. It's like the human connection of like what it means to be a part of a group of people doing something together to support something such as art, right? This is a thing that goes long back, and and finding the way to generate that culture within your peers.
Yeah, yeah, to get people out from those screens and into the real.
Yeah, back into the real thing. I mean, with AI and other things, AI to me like is like one of those things where it's like a sociopath emulating emotion. Okay, uh, it cannot truly feel or understand what that actual experience is. And that's why I don't worry about AI when it comes to songwriting or
Yeah.
performance, because the raw, genuine things of like why humans make music is primitive. It goes beyond just like a paycheck and consumerism. Like that only has become a thing since radio became a thing in existence, right? The idea of I can go earn more playing in a studio, a radio studio, in the, you know, 40s and 50s and 60s, well, 40s and 50s, than like working in a field somewhere, right? It changed things and turned it into like a consumer thing. Plus the advent of record labels and all charting and all these other things that come into what the modern music experience is. But humans have been harmonizing together and making music since they've been painting on cave walls. It was never about that. It was about talking about your day, right? We going back to what BJ does, right? The old time music, blues music, like roots music of all kinds, folk traditions. Those are all about talking about your human experience, something we all share, regardless of what caste we come from, what place we are, what culture. It transcends all those things. It comes down to the heartbeat, the primal nature of mankind is, I mean, in humankind. And so I think that that is what community also revolves around, like food, other things. They also intrinsically link into those kinds of receptors and things that we hold dear to, and that's why preservation of our art forms, that's so important for what we do, not just as artists, but as culture and community as well. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And it's funny, like I always get on tangents. I really want to make sure that your sound, for somebody that is a country traditionalist, that loves the old legends, that loves that chimey, that just has that chime and the stuff like you don't hear anymore. Listen to your music today. I was like, and I know there's like a resurgence of that, or people are actually like finally like letting go of their legends. You know, and like people have been listening, especially the older folk have been, you know, riding in trucks with their parents and having experiences with this music, and these all these legends are starting to pass on. You know, next, you know, don't you know Willie Nelson? You know what I mean? It's
He's getting up there, man. He's getting up
I
there.
know, I know,
Yeah.
and I think people are like they're finally seeing that like I can let go of my heart of, you know, loving like Waylon and all those guys, and they're finding like people like you are keeping the old soul alive. Because I wanted to like for you to record like that, that has to be expensive. It
Man,
because
uh,
it
you
doesn't
know,
sound like you're doing any like shortcuts into really delivering the experience.
well that's Kevin Skurla. Um, my one of my dearest friends. We've written a long time together. We've known each other for as long as I've lived in Houston. I pretty much know Kevin Skurla, a great songwriter named Greg Cruz, introduced us. Um, when I had first moved here, he was playing in another project with a friend of ours named Morgan Howell, and that's when I met Kevin. And man, he just it's the studio that he's built out there. It's that we loved the same thing, you know. He's not a very talkative guy. He is humorously stoic sometimes. I think is how I would call it. There's such a mystique around the guy if you know him or have been around him, and some of you do. Uh, that he's just a different kind of guy, you know. And so there's not a lot of talking in the studio. It's just I've been out there since he built it, since he laid the wiring in himself, and he did it the right way, you know. Old school reverb chamber built, just like, you know, kind of modeled after Sugar Hill Studios here in Houston, which used to be Sun Studios. Uh, that place is amazing. I've been in there before, and you know George Jones cut records there, and so did Beyonce. You know, so it's just like a Houston staple, and he engineered there for a while, and but he's an amazing still player. Like, and on those songs, man, he's recording most of the instrumentation for those. So
Oh
he and I
wow.
just have a similar vision. We co-wrote a lot of those songs, both you know, both stuff that I've already released and the album coming out. He probably co-wrote 40% of it with me. But yeah, like that song we put out just now, "When Loving Me Was Wrong," that was originally cut by a guy named Randy Corner, um, who uh, he's from right here in Pasadena, Texas. It's just up the road from Houston, just kind of out, kind of southeast of the city. Um, and he's from there, and you know, it's like just grabbing those little pieces of tradition, because at the time when he was doing his thing in the mid '70s, it's a 4/4 shuffle, which is very traditional. Kind of like a Texas dance hall special, so to speak. You know, people two-step to it, and it's kind of one of those dying things within the art form. And you know, about the mid '70s, you see the shuffle just the 2/4, the 4/4 just completely disappear from radio, and you know, it's because major conglomerates started to buy up radio stations, and the local artists also stopped getting those those plays on local radio. It's that big change in what broadcasting was at the time. So guys like him who are filling up dance halls and are known regionally in Texas just don't make it outside of the state. You know, you lose people like Johnny Bush and some of these and some of these other artists that were huge here in Texas. But no, I didn't even know about them until I moved to Texas. You know, Johnny Bush, Gary Stewart, some of these people who I just like identified with what they were doing, and I felt my own connection through my own voice as an artist, uh, through those things that you know I'm hearing and doing. I mean, Texas is kind of, I think, the epicenter for what country music's doing today, which some people argue with me with and don't like when I say it, but you know, it's just my opinion. That and a nickel will get you nothing. It won't even get you a cup of coffee. So, you know, you take it for whatever it's worth, you know.
That's funny. So like I like questions like these. So if you were at a bar
Yeah.
and you sat down and you looked over and you're sitting next to George Jones and he asked you, what do you do, son? You say, oh, I'm a country artist. And if he asked you, what have you done that would have made me proud? Do you have an answer for that?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Because I know you do reference George Jones in your cheating song, which I thought was fantastic.
I do. I think George Jones is like one of those very complicated figures in country music, mainly because guys like George Jones or Towns Van Zandt or some of these other like just legends, Johnny Paycheck, whoever, right? You name these very dysfunctional human beings, uh, who happen to be fantastic artists. And I don't know, man. They carry a body count with them. You know what I mean? Like there's so many artists that have died trying to be George Jones or Towns Van Zandt or you name it, man. Anybody that made it into the 27 Club or anybody that you know, you take that kind of that idea of the tortured artist in general. I think George Jones kind of exemplifies that. The man didn't know how to express emotion outside of his own voice and his own art form. That's a tough place to live in as a human being.
Yeah.
And so I think if George Jones asked me that, I think, man, well, King of Nothing, the title track off my next album, it's a George Jones song, man. If I was gonna write a song for George Jones to sing, and if I was gonna do my best George Jones impression, which is a paltry one at best, it would be that song. And I think what it is that I think that I could bring to the table that George Jones would be proud of is that for me, I'm not the most technically savvy singer. I'm not. But I tell you what, I feel every lick and every word that I sing. It's about the emotion of the thing. It's always been a catharsis for me. So to be in that place where I can express myself openly is so difficult as a person. So I think in that way I kind of identify with George a little bit, because that guy was real when he sang, you know, and that's why he had the substance, all that other stuff. Man, that's not what made the good artist. That's not the thing that brought him to the antithesis of what he was as a creator or as a vocalist. It was the honesty.
Yeah. It's
It was the only
he,
place he could be vulnerable, and so that's what you hear. That's what makes him unique. That's why he takes it places other people don't, because that's how George Jones looks at things, you know. So to look at things in your own way, I think that would make him proud.
it's a good answer.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's an honest one.
Yeah. Now, like your connection of feeling everything, is that always a constant, or does it come and go?
Oh man, I like sometimes feeling nothing can be the most feeling thing you can have at the time, you know? Sometimes feeling nothing is the most impactful thing. I think outside of bouts of numbness in my life, feeling has never been a problem, you know? But I think overall, man, learning to regulate those feelings, channel them into a productive thing. So I think a lot of times we get this myth amongst musicians and artists that it again, it's like the emotionally disturbed artist is celebrated. But really what you have is a case of impulsivity, man. You know? It's like impulsivity properly harnessed. To me, my idea of that is creativity. That's what it is. It's the ability to jump to that place intuitively on some level that that creates good artists. The ability to take the risk, you know. Like I never understood artists who play it safe. You're in the most risk ridden business on the planet, and with a highly saturated market, and it's ultra competitive. It's really hard to separate yourself, from the rest of the pack, even if you're beautifully gifted. I can't. Most a lot of people we celebrate don't even find it in their own lifetime. They find it generations afterwards. It's not
Yeah.
an instant gratification game, and and so I don't know, man. Within that whole thing, it just kind of you got to put it in perspective, and the the big thing is like corruption and chaos in your life do not breed good art. Life will hand you a shit sandwich. Ain't no blues man that was born blind and a slave ever had to go look for trouble in his life. And what he wrote about was real and honest and true. And that's what we connect to now, and the greater thing. I think that's the trial as an artist, is to understand that your perspective is what makes you quote unquote unique. Like uniqueness of perspective. There's nothing original. I could take the same damn chords and notes and put them in an arrangement, and somehow that's original. It's not. It's unique in perspective, and it's how I look at the chords, it's how I look at the melody, it's how you look at the rhythm of the song, it's the words, how they're chosen, what they're put together as, what they meant to mean, and finding those things. I think that's that's the hard part.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing that makes beautiful art. You don't got to seek suffering. It'll just fucking find you. You know, as sure as you're walking along, lightning strikes. You know, we've all been there. It's waves on the beach. Good times in, good times out. Bad times in, bad times out. It's all gonna come and go, and that's what makes it powerful, because you're writing about that thing, the ebb and flow of actual life, and and that's things like that BJ captures, but Towns Van Zandt captures in a different way. or whatever it is, the emotional connection as we have as humans. I think that's so important for that in our sense of community and togetherness. Um, that's why I don't wax political a lot with what I write. I want to talk about humans. I don't want to talk about politics, and
Yeah.
those kinds of things. That's what's really the most important thing. If you keep that the center focus, everything falls into place. You know, I think in general. You know, so
Yeah, definitely. I always try to keep telling people that, and like with today, everything's about social media numbers and view counts and everything. And
yeah, it is.
I just know my buddy was like, he was like, man, like I try to do this, I try to do that, nothing pops off, blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, just keep going. Like you'll find your way. Don't give up. And it was like, I hate when people talk down like that. And I just stop somebody. I say, hey man, do you know who Zach Bryan is? And they go, no, 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 who's that? And I said, oh, no reason. And I was like, okay, you just quoted, you ain't never going to be no Zach Bryan. I said, well, that guy doesn't know who Zach Bryan is. You know who that guy could have been? Your fan. You know what I mean? Like you need to stop looking at the success of other people and like find your own. Just if you sing a song that you wrote just like 100% like honest to you, the people that are going to love you for that song are the people that are going to be there when you're playing the Opry stadiums. You're never going to lose that core demographic of the people that feel you. You know what I mean? As long as you don't get that deal and they'll be like, okay, here's here's the formula. Here's what we did to the last two guys. And
Yeah. Well,
we're
I
gonna.
think that's it, ain't it, man? I mean, time and tenacity equal together is talent. Like you can have somebody start naturally talented, but if you got somebody that's tenacious, work ethic, and it's not just the hours, right? I mean, we always talk about the 10,000 hour thing. I was thinking
Mm,
about this today when we're coming on this podcast because we talk about like because I feel like it's hard to stay fresh the more hours you gain, right? It's hard to challenge yourself in a different way. And that's really, it's not just time, it's how one challenges themselves to reach that next thing. I always say good writing is good editing. It's asking the right questions like, does this make sense for the song? Is this word carrying its weight? Are these things, are these the right choices that are right for the song? Or am I just doing what I can do instead of what I should do? Right? All those little questions you ask yourself when you're trying to clean up and make the thing that says it best for what it is that the vehicle you're trying to use for the idea, right? And I don't know, man. It's about like challenging yourself and then persistence. I saw this interview with Frank Zappa, and he was like they were saying like, hey Frank, like how do you how can you be successful in the music industry? And he says, well, if you want to be successful, and I'm paraphrasing grossly probably, uh, if you want to be successful in the music industry, there's two things you have to do. Number one is never quit, and number two is just keep going. And he's like, if you do those two things, you'll find that you're successful in the music industry and that it's still really damn hard. And there's no cheat code.
yeah.
For every great success you see, there's 10 years of work plus. Like the myth of discovery, the other big myth. Like, I think that's it. Breed chaos in your life because chaos and misery breeds art. Right? Big myth. The other big myth is the myth of discovery. Your talent is so great that you will just show up on the street corner playing your little guitar and singing a song, and somebody will come along and hear that, and they'll be like, you know what? Millions of dollars I'm going to put behind you, and I'm going to put you on a stage. The only time they're going to come calling you is when you don't need them, you know? So it's like I had to decide at some point, is this something that I'm doing because like I want to make $1 million? Hell no, I'm a niche artist, dude. Like, like when I went to college for poetry. Okay, to be a bestseller in poetry, you're talking like 17,000 copies, man.
Yeah.
What's a bestseller for a novel? You're talking 1 million copies minimum. Yeah, you know, so it's like I don't live in that world that's just popular. You know, that's not my calling in life, and it's not what I want to do. You know, if people connect to it, they connect to it because the writing's real, and they find a place there for themselves. You know, and hell yeah. And if that was massively successful on a commercial level, I would fucking love it. You know, it would be great. But that's not the reason. That's not the reason to do it. It's not the reason that I started making music or singing or doing any of those things. And keeping that in perspective when you're trying to manage the business side of it, it is hard. But you have to, you know? So it's like, man, it's not easy. Everybody's doing it. You've got to be like constantly pushing yourself to change and evolve. And so yeah, it's 10-year overnight success, as they say. You know, like and like him or low, Charlie Crockett has shown a model of a guy who started in a 15-passenger van and made it to a bus, and then made it to several tractor trailers. And I met the guy before, and genuine dude from my experience, you know, and uh, and he did it through hard work. That's what it is, man. You just got to go out there and grind your ass off
Yeah.
because there's no easy shortcut. Nobody's going to make it for you. You got to make it for yourself. And I mean, you got to have people help you along the way. Take a chance on you. Give you a shot. Like I had a music writer here in Houston for one of the papers tell me that nobody wanted to hear about a guy with 15,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. I ain't nobody, dude, you know? And so it's like, yeah, man, but back in the day we used to have coverage of those things, and that's you looked for those people that you were trying to promote to that next thing. It was
Yeah.
about the community and the greater thing. And then there again, that's something that the smaller artist is missing. It's become about streams on Spotify and things like that. It makes it harder to book, you know? And that's the thing, man. You just gotta that's why like you just got to be an opportunity generator. Again, it's you want opportunities in life, make opportunities for others. Like start by doing that. You know, it like we built a little scene here in Houston because a few of us wanted one, and and you know and now we, you know, like it's just it gets exponential at some point because people want that. They want a community. They want to be able to go show up somewhere where everybody knows you. You want to feel like you're going to the private clubhouse.
Yeah.
You want to feel like you know you show up and you know the band and they know you and all the artists in the community know each other and support each other. You look at any of those great schools and movements of art, whatever it is, like whether you're talking about like the New York School of Poets or the Beats or you know what was going on in San Francisco at that time with poetry as well. I always
Yeah.
or Chicago had some great stuff going on. That all started with a bunch of artists hanging out together, writing together, inspiring each other, building community, working together. Like so much of it gets boiled down into competitiveness. And I say, fuck competitiveness. Give me collaboration over competition any day. We
Yeah.
will all do better. That's the way we're made. We whether you believe we were created or evolved, it's what's advantageous to our species. Or we wouldn't be living in these giant fucking colonies everywhere.
Yeah.
So like
Right.
just yeah. You know, well, it doesn't matter how you look at it. It's the same net result, and so that's what's important. And that's what music is. It's about binding people together as a community, as a species, as humans, right? Like comedy bridges that gap. We talked about Stanhope and other people. They're able to talk about the hard things without beating you in the face with it.
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about human struggle, music does that for us. It lets us talk about the hard things without having to beat each other over the head. You know, there's some cultures where you can't talk about the sensitive matters until you're drinking, but there's got to be that outlet for it. You know, there's got to be that place for that catharsis to go, and that's what music is. That's what art is. And even from the experiencing part of it, right? From the observant part of it, that's what it creates is a catharsis, a place for our human emotions to express themselves, whether through our own work or through others, you know.
Yeah. And I really like how it seems like now people are starting to get back to that. Not, the, people call it bro country, It did get it got lost on me because I was just like, no, no, thank you. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like if Metallica sung the same song, the same, I guess I wouldn't listen to them anymore. I but it's really cool. Like there's people out there like you and everything that has that side of them. I think it's I think it's wild. Like you were going to school for poetry. I love that because
Yeah. It's
like
the
dude
most
like
useless degree field ever, but I mean, no, not really, but yeah, you know what I mean. It's like
that's
never
great
got me
though.
a job once, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. You ever see the movie Orange County?
Yes, yes,
Where
I have.
how many famous people, how many rich people in literature? Stephen King, one. And it's
One. Yeah.
but the great part of that is like the core part of it, you know, besides all the wacky antics with Jack Black and everything, it's he finally said, you know what, if that's what you want to do, that's that's what you got to do, but just do it the way you want to do it. And I just really like that. And the movie, I don't know if you the movie Crossroads.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
remember that
think
movie.
yeah, when you know he was like, I want to learn Robert Johnson's lost song. And he was like, well, who are you? He goes, I'm a blues man. And he said, you don't know nothing about the blues. You're from Juilliard. And I love how like when he, you know, doing all the going, we're gonna hobo, and they went trying to go out the Mississippi and the crossroads and everything. And when the girl left him and he started playing the guitar, like he meant it. And that was like a like if you're a musician and you watch that movie, it's like such a cool scene where like his guitar playing is like so different, and it's like he feels it, and that's the like Charles Bukowski is one of my favorite poets.
Bukowski. Yeah.
It's just,
I
whenever I feel like I'm out of ideas or anything, I it's such a lonesome, just a there's a
yeah.
darkness to him, but he writes some of the most beautiful work out of just being drunk, lonely, while
And
also
degenerate.
hating, yeah,
Yeah.
degenerate and hating.
Degenerate gambler. I mean,
Yeah,
dude, Bukowski's crazy too because like early in his career, you know, he was sending out all these manuscripts to get them published, and they were all handwritten. So just got thrown in the trash.
it's
Countless manuscripts he sent out over and over and over again just to get them thrown in the trash. And then his first book published, I think, was like The Days Ran Away Like Wild Horses Through the Hills. I'm butchering that, and anybody out there that knows that, I'm sorry. Just look it up, Google, it'll fix it. You know. But yeah, I mean, I think Bukowski was interesting for me because like when I first started writing poetry, I had just like I was 24 and I decided, man, I'm gonna go back to college. You know, I spent some time out working and things, and I was like, man, I'm gonna go back to college. But I want to be a writer. It's because that's what I always wanted to be. And so, just being me, I was like, well, I'm just gonna go do do what everybody's telling me not to do. So, you know, I went in and enrolled in a small like well state college now in Florida, and just like was writing poetry on the side and reading a bunch and really into like kind of just being exploratory with my life because I'm in my 20s, you know, and I'm raging and I'm trying to figure out things. And I was a minister at one point and I had just left the church, you know, so like I'm in a headspace that's like a very different kind of place. And so I had this instructor at that small state college, and Bill Fisher is the guy's name. And I just showed up at his class and I took a entry level lit class with him. And he was talking, and his ideas and the way he talked about writing and art inspired me. And so I went home and I wrote out like 30 or 40 poems in a night. And I just took them to him at the end of the class and I was like, hey, I want to be a poet, and here you go. This is what I've been writing, and I want to know how to be better. I want to know what I can do or how I can be better. So the next class I come in, and he says, Chris, do you have time after class where we can go talk about these poems? And I said, Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I went to his office for his office hours, and we talked about it. He's like, I think you might have a natural bend towards this. He's like, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go down to this place. It's a little place called Subterranean Bookstore. It's in Pensacola, Florida. And he's like, you just go in there and you get any one of these writers. But he's like, you should get Charles Bukowski, because I was reading like William Blake and like you know this epic poetry and stuff. Trying to find my place in this thing. That I like had a fascination with, even because I was already into songwriting at the time. But uh, I just had a fascination with it because everybody I was listening to, they also, some of them wrote, like Patti Smith or Jim Morrison and some of these other artists that were also poets, and I would read their poetry and I would read about their influences, and then I was basically tracking them down, trying to read more and understand more. And so he prescribed me Bukowski. He's like, I don't care what you get, just go down to that store and find Bukowski and buy it. And I went down and I found this out of print book called Dangling in the Turdifordia. And it changed how I thought about writing forever, because it was guttural, it was honest, it was raw, it was linear, it was all those things that just challenged you, challenged how you looked at the world. It was a different world than what I grew up in, too. This other place where it's okay to say anything you fucking want. And it
Yeah.
changed my art forever, because then I just stopped caring about what I said and started focusing on more of how I said it and why I said it, and instead of like what it was that I had to say. And so yeah, Bukowski was like that for me. He was I had professors at Pitt that hated him, like, oh, he's not really poetry, like
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah. See,
man.
I remember somebody asked me, they were like, that's like, what makes you think you can make it in music? And I'll butcher it. It was a Charles Bukowski quote. I said, well, I was born to hustle. I will sell roses to people on the Avenue of the Dead. It's something he
Yeah,
said,
I think
something
that
like
is a
that.
Bukowski quote, and I can't remember it exactly, but that's a pretty good paraphrase if it's not
Yeah,
exact.
and I'm like, dude, because like I remember just showing my books to somebody, and they're like, you make this much money off of these people? I'm like, yeah. It's you know what I mean. Like you got to know how to make. It's such a wild game out there, especially when you're torn. And like it's like, are we eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches again, or are we gonna stop and get a couple $5 pizzas? And that's all, like how much t-shirts you sell. Or my big thing was raffling stuff, and just it's such a huge, not a lot of people realize, like they just you're a car salesman, you're a poet, you're an entertainer, and
Yeah,
you're a ringmaster, you're a
man,
leader. It
I hate having to make content. It's
I know a lot of
yeah,
people
partly
like that.
because like I just don't want to come off as disingenuine.
Yeah,
It's like, how do I make something that's like artistic and entertaining, an extension of the performance, maybe even, rather than like, and if I can be honest, if I can be just very candid, like I hate making lip syncing videos. They're the most awkward thing on earth.
yeah,
But they tell me I need to do them. And it's like, but how do you, like, they're always last minute for me because I dread doing them.
yeah,
It's like, here I am as a sensitive, evolved human being, lip syncing to you, a sensitive, evolved human being, over a
yeah.
song that I recorded 3 years ago. And it's always weird, man.
It
So
is.
it's like, how do you connect with people to show them who you really are? Like what is my personality? I want you to know me. You know what I mean? Like, I want be able to connect to you as you connect to my songs, as we connect to each other as people. Like, there's nothing so far removed from anything that anybody does as to what I do. I truly believe that. It's a matter of circumstance and pursuit, right? like the things I chose to cultivate in my life may be different than the things that you chose to cultivate in your life, but that doesn't mean that our connection as a whole is not very, very, very much the same. Uh, I think far too much and again, like going back to like the idea of, I have friends that are very political in the way that they approach their life, and I don't disagree and do disagree with some of their politics. Uh, and I understand that some of them, man, really have a heart for other people, and that's where that comes from, and that's a beautiful thing. But when people show up to my show, or they show up to our weekly, where they come to dance and be there amongst people, I want them to come and just be there. Be now
Yeah.
with us. You know? Put that stuff aside. The week is hard. What we do for a living, trying to make ends meet, whatever, hard. And even if it's not, you got other things in your life that are difficult. I guarantee you, nobody gets a free skate in life. That's just a fact. That's why these songs exist. That's why they've existed for hundreds of years now. And then we still connect to them. Something that somebody wrote 200 years ago, I can listen to and feel intrinsically. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, I, whatever place we find ourselves in, we are in the same oarless boat, drifting down the same aimless river towards the same empty ocean. So, hell, man, like, come in, get away from it, take a spell off. Let's talk about the feelings that we can't have in a normal day. Maybe have a drink, maybe not. Just be around, be a thing, live in the moment. And that is what music is about. Whether you're making it on a porch with your family at the end of the day, talking about what went on down the street from you, or what murder happened on what hilltop, it doesn't matter. It's about that community and the end of the day thing. Like Ethiopian coffee culture, I think is a beautiful example of like the idea of community. Everybody gathers together in the village. Everybody partakes of the coffee. The younger serve the elder. It's that whole concept that we lose in our modern entity sometimes, in our globalness, in the technological age of like fast consumerism, and not to demonize anything, man. I make a living off of consumerism. Man, I gotta sell T-shirts to make a survival. I gotta sell records. I gotta go out and play bars where people pay to have drinks. It's
Yeah.
it's all part of that symbiotic system. I'm not here to trash it. I'm just saying, let's improve it. Like so many people ready to run away and do other things when they could just be making it better one day at a time, one person at a time. And that's really where change starts, is on that elemental level where we are as humans. And I think that's it, man. The humanness. That's what people say I didn't I have people say like I didn't know country music was so soulful. Well, of
Yeah.
course it's soulful, man. It's born out of all the same things everything's born out of. And so, it's like if it ain't, then you're not doing it right. Yeah, like it's all about us as people, and that's the cross thing. Whether it be like I listen to all kinds of music, man, because it's there. The thing that I love, the lyricism, the idea, the human experience, that thing, it's all there. Whether you listen to hip hop or soul or country or, I mean, God, we all born from blues and jazz. Really, when it comes down to it, if you make an American music, that's where it really the heart of what it took over the world was in blues and jazz, and that all comes from spirituals and African music and the blending of folk traditions in Europe and all those things that came in to make what is American music. And so just being a part of that, being a part of the tradition, keeping it alive, preserving those things that are genuine and aren't just generated by some algorithm or some AI or some other thing that doesn't connect to our actual humanness. Man, when they're like it's 5 o'clock somewhere, when we started it was that here. So I have a little bit of I have a little bit of mezcal I've been like sipping on the whole time. So uh, I just figured we were hanging out. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, dude, it's funny. It's like,
just keep it neighborly.
yeah, I remember the one guy. He was like, "Dude, I got nothing to do. What? How long do we go for?" And I said, "Normally it's the who's got the strongest bladder." Because some of the ones I've talked for like 3 hours and I've been fine, and then other times it's just like,
Man,
yeah,
I will always take a bathroom break when offered. Like it just nowadays it's like, I'm good, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, right now. And you're like, what? And you're like, your body's like, yeah, right fucking now, dude. And you're like, well shit, I'm in the middle of nowhere.
yeah,
Is this another Gatorade bottle incident, on the side of
yeah,
fucking 290 or something?
yeah.
So
Bet you wish you had sweatpants on.
yeah, bet you wish you had sweatpants. Dude, I went out on tour in January and it was so so freaking cold. We went up to Nashville and it was like I think the first night we were there was 5 degrees, which is
Wow.
cold. And I mean I've lived up in northern regions of the country before, so I've experienced negative temperatures and double digit negative temperatures and hellish negative temperatures. But two of the guys with us were from Texas, and they had never experienced anything like single digit temperatures. And oh my God, man, I thought they were gonna die. I did. Like one of them was like, I can't feel my legs this morning because we stayed in this place in Nashville with our buddies, and it's an old house, and like it just doesn't quite keep up. It's
Mm,
it's
yeah.
it's cold in there, and so like they had a hard time. But I just stayed in peepaw clothes the whole time, like just like grandpa clothes. I was just in a camo coveralls the whole time, insulated. I was fine, man. I just discovered that like those old guys, they had it right. It's comfort over speed, baby.
Yeah.
Every day, every day.
Yeah. Eh, yeah. It's especially like I've never really cared what anybody thought about what I wore to an extent,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
but like, yeah, I get it. Like if I'm gonna feel comfortable like wrapped in a blanket, so be it. Like I'm still out here, and man, that's just like I'm like done with the cold. It's
Yeah, you're in
yeah,
Delaware, right?
yeah.
And
It's
that's cold up there, dude.
yeah, it's not. Well, you said you went to Pitt, not like
I
that.
did.
Man, I've been there once, and I was just like hanging around like what Oakland, and
Yeah, yeah, that's where the campus is.
yeah,
Spent a lot of time in Oakland.
yeah. I'm trying to think. What was it? Fatheads.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I went up there for St. Patrick's Day. What a
Oh my
wild
God.
experience! That is
That
insane,
well, they have the like the second largest St. Patty's Day
dude.
celebration outside of Boston.
I had no idea.
It's insane. Like St. Patty's Day in Pittsburgh, I was on the south side of Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh as they say. I was on the south side of Pittsburgh. Uh, on St. Patty's Day, and this guy was walking around and he just had surgical tubing coming out the bottom of his pants. And I'm like, what the hell is that, dude? He's like, oh yeah, I just got a funnel taped up
Yeah,
there. Just go out
I,
on the street and let it rip. And I was like, that's wild, homie. That's
it
wild.
yeah, that was one of the craziest times I've ever had because I went up there and it was my friend Carrie and it was 9, 10 other girls and it was just me in a limo and I was like, okay, this is probably gonna be fun. And they were like, oh yeah, you have no idea. And I'm like,
You had no idea, did you?
I was like, whatever, girls, I got this. There's nothing that you could do that's gonna make me go, holy shit. And then we get there and I'm like,
Holy shit.
I was like, we need to exchange numbers. We need a meeting spot. If we get lost, we need. And they're like,
Buddy system,
yeah.
everybody.
It's
Yes.
just this. It was the most amount
Man.
of people. It blew like I thought. Like Broad Street in Philly with the Mummers was popular up there. And then they're like, dude, this is like one of the biggest celebrations in the country. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah,
didn't
it's
no one
wild.
tell me this? I just thought we
Man,
were just.
wait, people don't realize Pittsburgh is a drinking town. Like when I lived there, man, I lived there for about 8 years, and over on the south side, there was this place called Kopi's too, and you could go in and get 25-cent PBR pints and 50-cent shots of whiskey.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was that kind of town, man, and it almost killed me. So glad I moved down to Texas. But you know, it's just like it's one of those places. I mean, Bourbon Street is the only street in the United States that has more bars per square block than
Then
Southside in Pittsburgh.
that's
It's
crazy.
wild, and it's all
Yeah,
like mom and pop stuff. Once you get down, you know, or it was. I mean, this is a long time ago. Between like
yeah,
22nd and past 10th to 10th to 22nd was like mostly just mom and pop places, like old 6-pack shops, little off like Carson Street bars, and yeah, it was you know, it could get wild out there, man, in old
yeah.
Pittsburgh. You
You,
know, man.
you'll laugh at this. The girl that drove me up there was scared to pass tractor trailers. It was the worst drive ever. And we're like holding back all these cars. And we're like, people are passing us on like the shoulder. And I'm like, there's no shoulder. And I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm scared to pass the tractor trailers. It's like, we're
We're gonna die if you don't do
yeah.
this.
I'm like, dude, it, sometimes I'm glad I grew up with no cameras, but that right there,
I'm so glad I grew up with no
yeah,
cameras.
that right, I wish I could just the way I, like just butt totally off the seat, like, and they're nuts up there. They know how to drive up there. They're born and bred Rust Belt crazies, and it's to not pass a tractor trailer that's going up those inclines.
But yeah, man, it was like you're going through the Laurel Highlands, you know? It's just like all just up and down, and then of
Yeah,
course Pittsburgh is ridiculously steep. People don't realize
yeah,
how up and down Pittsburgh is and how beautiful it is. I think that it people don't realize how beautiful Pittsburgh is as a city, especially if you're coming in through like the Fort Pitt Tunnel into downtown. There's just a mountain in front of you, and then all of a sudden you're on this double decker bridge going across the river into downtown. It's you know, that's why I moved there. And
yeah,
but it's yeah, it gets wild there, dude. It's a different kind of like attitude, and people are friendly there, but
yeah,
it's just its own culture. And it's like not really Northeast, and it's not really Midwest. I think
yeah.
Pittsburgh is the gateway to the Midwest. That's what I think of it as, you know.
How'd
'Cause
you like that pizza with the cold toppings? Did you ever have it?
oh yeah, that's like a big thing there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, man. That and the Permane Brothers sandwich, you know, where they put the
Oh,
fries
dude.
on the slaw, and it's like capicola and tons of cheese. You know, it's like made for mill workers, calorie counts. You know, and but I mean that's the cool thing about Pittsburgh too is like you could go up to like Thunderbird Cafe and get like a Boilermaker at like 7 in the morning. You know, it's just like it's a shift work town, so there's still
Yeah,
bars open at like 7 that open at 7 in the morning. They close at 4 and open at 7. You know, they just close
yeah,
down to clean it up and then reopen it. You know, and so and you get everybody still smokes in the bar there. You know, or they did when I was there. I went back through Pittsburgh on my way to New York. Want to say maybe it was like late summer, fall last year. We went up to yeah, August. That's when it was. August. So summer. Last year we went up and did Honky Tonkin in Queens. That is amazing. What those two dudes are doing up there with that is amazing. Um, we went and played that, and my buddy who played an old. We didn't realize we were punk at the time, but we were just extremely punk. I played in this kind of experimental string band that I moved to Houston when I first moved down here called Son of Bitch. You know, we put out one album that was poorly recorded in a retired cobbler shop in like 2 hours north of Pittsburgh. You know, just super grungy and not a way to record anything. Uh, but great, you know, in that sense. But yeah, so we rolled through and man, it just kind of cool to go back through the city and see it again. Hasn't
yeah,
really changed that much.
yeah.
It has, but it hasn't, you know. And so I don't know. It was so formative for me, and I was so wild when I lived there. You know, like the height of my outlaw wild boy days. You know, living in Pittsburgh, of
Yeah.
all places. So man, yeah, I survived it. It's still there.
Yeah.
Survived
There's,
me.
yeah, there's a coal mine that's still on fire up there, right?
Oh yeah, up in Western PA. Yeah,
Yeah. Now, who wrote a song about that?
who's that?
Shane Smith and the Saints.
Oh yeah, that's right. He
The,
did,
the
man.
Mountain. The Mountain, which I love that song. And somebody schooled me on it. It was like, yeah, they're up in PA. The mine is still on fire. And I'm like, PA, that's kind of where I'm from. And, I was just like, oh, well, that's cool. Because that's definitely like one of my favorite songs of theirs. And I love, like, the first time I went to go see him, it, I wish if someone would have had a camera on me, that was what they opened up with. I was just like, no way. Because
Yeah.
they're definitely one of my favorite finds from, yeah, it
Are
just
they?
blows me away.
That's like Deer Tick, right? Do you know that band, Deer Tick?
I,
They're
I've,
out of
I've heard one,
Providence.
I've heard one or two
He's like in
songs of theirs.
Mockingbird Brother, too. I think is the other project he had, but or has. But man, have you ever heard a band where you're like, oh, I like them, but then when you go out to see them, you're like, holy fucking shit, this band
Yeah.
is amazing. This is my new favorite band.
Yeah.
Like that connection from the live experience to like the recording. It's so
Oh,
hard to
dude,
capture that. It's so hard to capture what it is to be live. That's
I
what made
know.
Willie Nelson famous, is that he captured what it was like to hear his band live. Like, I don't know. You know, it's just like, yeah. That who's that band for you? That you like you heard them and you were like, man, these songs are good. The recordings are great, but holy shit, them live.
I've had that quite a bit, and we were just talking about Shane Smith and the Saints. I remember when they got on stage, I was like, "Where's everybody else?" I had
Yeah.
no idea that amount of people could make that big of a sound, and it was really cool. Is like Sunshine ran me through his pedal board, and then I got to talk to Tim Lightyear, who was in the band prior, and he was just like,
Yeah.
"Hey man, it's this guitar pedal right here, running in stereo, and just because being a heavy metal guitar player, like you're not really like reverb, not really. There's
Not
not a
so
lot of
much.
reverb if unless you're playing lead. But other than that, I was just like, there's just it made me like think. I love going to see a show and being like, I really need to like reevaluate how I play my instrument to really be more versatile. And because like I always loved like David Gilmour, but I just don't have that style. It I'm not like a slow hand kind of person. I attempt to be, but I
Yeah.
just don't have I don't have that soul. Every once in a while I'll get a spark and I'll have it, but it just doesn't stay. That's always been like a frustrating like with my playing is, man, sometimes there's just I just feel it. And then in other
Yeah.
times it's like, man, I'm just running through patterns that I know people will go, "Oh, that sounds cool." Which is it that
Isn't that part of the whole thing though? It's like that balance between those two things. Like the cerebral and the emotional aspects of the thing.
yeah, I just feel like if they were just could just mesh together a little bit
Yeah.
more, I feel like people would instead of, cuz like as guitar players and musicians, a lot of that time is spent by yourself practicing the same stuff over and over
Over
again.
and over
Why
again. Yeah.
your friends are all out partying, getting girls, getting drunk and living the life, and they're getting all these crazy stories, and you're sitting there going, you
Yeah, I was in
know,
my room for 7 hours today doing this.
yeah, yeah, playing
Yeah.
pentatonic scales, and right, trying to write, trying to do this, and it's I don't know, I just love that. Like when Eddie Van Halen, he was like, man, I spent so much time alone while everybody else was out having fun. Well, I mean, obviously it paid off for him because then he got the you know
I think that goes back to like the thing about the rock star myth, the work ethic that goes into
yeah
like being successful. I think that is everything in life, man.
yeah
There's not like again, there's just no cheat code. Any discovery story you can find, that's like so rare. That's like saying every little leaguer is going to be a major league baseball player. Statistically, that's just not true.
yeah
It's just not. And so again, make that art for something outside of a paycheck. With the moment it just becomes squarely about the paycheck is the moment that you lose the thing that you started doing it for in the first place. Because yeah, you got to earn a living. That's part of it, right? You know, you want to be in a position, but even then, like I work really hard, you know, most of the time for the 17% of the job that I really love. Like
yeah
it's the 17%. And it takes a lot of sacrifice for everybody, especially initially on. Like when I first went full time, you know, um, I was I was working for a pest control company here in Houston, Texas, and and I loved my job. It was cerebrally enticing, and it was different every day, and I never had to sit still, and that was great, and I love those aspects of it. But it was also like 100-hour work weeks because I was doing all the stuff that I do now,
mm,
but also working 60 hours a week, So it's like two full-time jobs all the time. And so my wife was like, just quit. Just quit what you're doing now. Go do this. You're really good at what you do now. You can always go back to trapping animals and selling people, on the things that they need to keep their structural integrity around their home. You
yeah
can always go back to doing those things. It's not something that's, time contingent. And so she was like, just go out there and do it. So for the first 6 months, it was like roulette for us because, you know, she's working and I'm basically looking for work, and trying to find those things. And then you make a lot of mistakes. And all your mistakes early on, they're all expensive. They're all expensive fucking mistakes
yeah
because that's the adult life. When you make mistakes, when you get to a certain point, they just cost you money, or they cost you time and money, which is even worse. So you make a lot of mistakes, you start to learn, and then slowly over time, it becomes sus- sustainable. That's the sustainability and the longevity. So it's like we get in this constant pursuit of virality as artists when what we should really be focused on is making art. You like like forget all the other stuff. If the content you're creating, it's not really satisfying for me unless it's an extension of the art form. And like what is that even, right? How do we define that or quantify it or create utility for it? That's really tough. So it's like it's about finding that balance between being an artist and being an entrepreneur, because that's the other aspect of it. It's like, let's come up with a t-shirt design that people will buy because they like it, not because they know who the fuck I am, because nobody knows who the fuck I am, you know? Nobody. So it's that kind of thing, it's the balance of the art versus the business. And the fact that business takes takes the trump card, because if you can't earn the living, it's hard to sustain the art. But then it's hard to sustain the art if you're constantly working diligently to earn a living. So it's like the balance is really difficult, I think, for
yeah
most mid and lower tier artists who are just in that zone of like, what's next? What's the thing that you're working towards? What's the endless ambition that you decided to pursue your life around? And so those kind of balancing acts, I think, are really tough.
yeah now say I know you're dropping your new album in May, right? the
Yeah,
the
yeah,
King of Nothing.
yeah. King of
So,
nothing, man.
and you drop it, you know you go to bed that night and you wake up and just say there's just wild streaming numbers and everything. What would
Be
be
great.
your next move? Do you have like Like, do you have something like you need to happen for like? Do you have like a plan of like if something just takes off, even if it's like somebody took a video of you and say, "Hey, you want to hear the next best traditional country artist? Check this guy out." Do you have like a game plan where it's just like protocol that you just know what to do and you're just waiting for like that spark?
Man, I never know what to do.
That
Like
there's the
like
navigator
I
thing.
think
Yeah.
I was just blessed with with the ability to not be risk averse at all. You know, I'm a gambler at heart. I think ultimately, I'll always my old man would always tell me I'd bank on the 3% chance that something would work out for me. so, so you know, I have a gambler's heart. I do on some level, and I had this relentless confidence in myself, which so many people have tried to just wean me off of, and I can't do it. So there's those things, right? It's the persistence of things. So for me, like, I already know the album's done. It's done. Like,
Yeah.
it's in the pressing plant. It's ready. It's set to come out May 2nd. Or, yeah, May 2nd. We're doing the release show on May 3rd. Like, it's done. It's finished. That piece is going to be into the world. And then from there out, it's a raised baby. You know, there's nothing that I can do to further it from that point. It's finished. So the next thing is the next thing. So my mind is already on the second album. You know, there's a couple things I want to go in and change and do different. We have both pretty much in the can, the first and the second, and then I have a live record that I cut, which who knows if I actually got a live record. I haven't even started to sift through that yet, you know, because I was so focused on the studio album coming out. And so, you know, it's like it's on to the next thing. I mean, I think it's always about that progression. And then I'm already on to the third and fourth and fifth albums. Like those are things I'm already thinking about. Like the so one of them is a concept album and so I have some kind of ideas and then some of it's like a maybe like a western album uh that like I want to cut with a couple of buddies of mine that I just think would be fun as a studio project. And just because I have a bunch of songs written that I really care about and want to give them a vehicle to just kind of live in the world. So, you know, it's always about the next thing, you know. It's
Yeah.
celebrate it. When I get to do the release show, I'm gonna celebrate it. Who knows? I may even get drunk. I have no clue. Uh, but I know that one thing is we'll celebrate the accomplishment of that thing and being able to do it the way that I wanted to, which it's all about that for me. You know,
Yeah.
like it's about the ability to do it the way that I would like to do it, and so I had the privilege of doing that. Um, it took me however long it took me to get there. That doesn't even matter to me. But you know, it's about doing that thing. And so I'll celebrate it. But really, I'm already mentally on to like writing the next thing, doing the next thing. What's next on the agenda? Like that is now I can feel good about it that it's complete and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And I think that's more what I think almost like a feeling of relief on some level, a
Yeah.
feeling of accomplishment on another, and then just the curiosity of seeing what it becomes because like once we release something as an artist into the world it takes on the perception of the listener of the person who connects to that thing. You know, it's always interesting to hear people's interpretations of my own songs. It can be something that's like, you know, very intuitively on the same connection that I had when I wrote it, or it could be something vastly wildly different that they draw from that thing. And so I always think that's the other thing, the curiosity of what it turns into once it leaves your tender love and care and is given over to uh, the common sphere of like what else is out there and other people's ideas and perceptions and opinions and all those things that are interesting to me. You know, you never know
Yeah.
how people perceive something. So
Yeah. It can be totally, like you said, totally one way or totally the other. But like, uh, back to BJ, he said once you release it, it could mean something, 20 different things to 20 different people. and he's just like, it's it's weird how like you put a song out there and it's like it's not yours anymore once it hits. Even though they all like, like my one buddy calls them like his babies. He's like, I go sending my babies out in the world.
Yeah, you just let them go. Let them toddle off.
Yeah,
You know, they're going to be all right. You know, you raised them okay. It's now time for them to just kind of take on the thing that they become.
yeah,
And you know, that's anything, right? Whether we have children or we have songs or we have anything that we create or invest ourselves into, our identity into, they're just going to be what they are when they get out in the world. No, and why care about that? And some
yeah,
level, you know. I mean, obviously, well, I think most notably about like something like "Born in the USA." It's a great example. This Vietnam War protest song written by Springsteen that Ronald Reagan wanted to use as his campaign song.
yeah,
All people hear is this anthemic, the anthemic feel of the song. All they hear is the feeling of what it
yeah.
makes them feel. They hear that like that chant of like somewhere they're proud to be from. And I think that's, I'm not weighing in on one side of an argument or another here.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say is like the perception of the song became the reality of how people viewed it, not necessarily how the artist intended it.
Yeah.
Go read the lyrics. It's not talking about what you think it's talking about half the time. Most people, right? Like our view of that song is different than what it is. And of course you got the E Street Band, which I will go on the record right now and say that I'm just not a big fan of. You know, I'm like a Bruce Springsteen, Nebraska kind of guy. Like him, an 8-track recorder, a harmonica, like the songwriter. You know,
Yeah.
that Bruce Springsteen, I fucking love. You know, but and I did see him one time at Soldiers and Sailors Museum in Pittsburgh when I was a student at the university. It's like a 200-seat auditorium. And it's him by himself, and you start to see like who the guy is. You know, who the writer is in that moment. That's what's transcendent. There's very few songwriters that can captivate a room. Dean Johnson, you ever heard of him?
Why do I know that name? Uh,
He had this.
I don't
He
know.
had a song that was pretty viral on Reservoir Dogs. But I,
Okay.
I I was out with a guy named Dylan Earl, who some of you might know or not know. Um, Fantastic songwriter. This cat out of Arkansas, dear friend of mine. But you know, it was like my first tour as a full-time musician, you know, coming into this, like after Stephanie and my wife and I decided that like we were going to take the plunge and do the thing, you know. And he said, don't worry about it, buddy, I'm gonna help you out, you know. And he he helped me book the backside of my first tour, you know, which is like a couple of dates in Arkansas, Kansas City, and Oklahoma, you know. Went to Tulsa, played the Mercury Lounge, and we played Hillsiders and Kansas City and Strawberry Hill, like on the Kansas side of the line. And we are coming off Americana Fest, and he's like, "Hey, my buddy Dean is going to join us." And I was already a fan of Dean Johnson because I saw him on Western AF, you know. And he's just got like this ethereal voice and a really unique songwriting perspective. And in the first night we played in Little Rock, he just captured the bar instantly. You know, like there's like Ryan Adams could be like that too when I saw him when I was like 19, 20 years old. And he's just, you know, playing in Whiskey Town and doing solo gigs up in Raleigh, North Carolina. But it was like that. And then I just remember one place in particular. We're in Fayetteville. It's this place called the Smoking Barrel. It's like right there, which somebody I love it. They called it Fayetteville Redneck Boulder. Like that's exactly what that place is.
Mhm.
It's beautiful. So you know we're there in Redneck Boulder, and he's playing the Smoking Barrel, and he steps on stage, and suddenly the bar you could hear a pin drop. He's half a song in, you hear a pin drop in the bar, and nobody said anything for 35, 40 minutes. That that is a different thing entirely. So, you know, I play with a full band a lot of times. I think the thing about it is the songwriting, like there's very few songwriters who can come in and captivate a room. And so, yeah, I don't know, man. It's like I totally lost my train of thought. Call it the mezcal. I don't know. But yeah, it's, you know, it's that thing that draws people in, that whether it's charisma or the talent or those things, very rare to
Yeah.
find.
Yeah, and it's like even if and even if you don't know what's going on, they have like an aura to them where like if you have self-reflection and you have common sense and you know how to be out in public, if you just know you're in one of those moments, you just know like I'm going to shut up and just just wait for the moment or like when's the right time to realize cuz like I've experienced it where you know and I didn't know what was going on. It's kind of was like what is going on and you know just being new to the genre, you know I've never experienced like just moments where it's just a guy and his guitar and he's just connecting to whatever life experience they're going through their head thinking of a song. And it's like, because normally, like when I would go to shows, like there's people swinging around other people, kicking other people,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just like mayhem. And it's it is different. And I'm like the Bird's Nest in Dunn, Carolina. I don't know if you've ever been there. Like I went there, and it was like even like people ordering drinks were like, I'll take this, and the bartender, okay, that'll be 350. And I was like, man, this is really really
Like
cool.
a
And
listening room.
exactly, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That was one of my first times being where it's like on the
Dude, a
wall, like,
listening
shh.
Dude, we have a place here in Houston called Anderson Fair. You know, Guy Clark played there, Towns Van Zandt. Like you go into the place, the bricks that lay the floor were part of the Houston streets at some point.
Oh wow,
It just is there. You know, there's certain venues you walk into that just have this thing to them. Like
yeah,
they just have a thing. Like the first time I got to go to Lukenbach and play there. It's like that dance hall has a thing. It's soaked into the wood. It's an aura around the place. I I think Anderson Fair is kind of that kind of thing. It used to be just a small Italian restaurant, and you got like Towns Van Zandt playing in the window, and now they have like a room built off the side. Um, that happened at some point, and you know it's different, but it's the oldest running like Americana folk club in the country, contiguous, you know, and it just has that feel to it. And you walk into those listening rooms where people are there to hear
hmm
what you have to say. It's unrealistically powerful, both for the artist and the listener, because you don't connect to people the same way when you're on stage with a band. You just don't. You know,
yeah,
sometimes sometimes you're there. You know, like when we went up to New York last, we had some like for me, we're very spiritually moving shows that you know, it was also one of the hardest tours we ever went on, from like just different aspects of it, you know. So it was this like very friction based thing where, you know, we're there and we're in the moment and the band's together, everybody's connected, and we have that thing, and the whole bar comes in together. You start off like when we're in a Skinny Dennis, and it just felt like it's that little pocket in front of the stage, and then slowly it expands out. And by the time you get fully into the set, everybody in the back that you're looking at is they're there. We're all there together. All of us the musicians, us the performers, you the congressional body that is in front of us. We're all fucking there together, and we're just it's the thing. It's the experience. It's what we're there for. It's why we showed up. It's why I do this. It's why you come. It's that thing. To experience that on a level in a place that's not a listening room, that's not a place where that thing happens, there's not a lot of people that can do that. I
Yeah.
don't feel like I present that as a songwriter. Will I connect with you? Will we get to be friends? Will we have a hangout session? That's how I met Steve. I was just doing songwriting stuff, you know. Yeah, and it's how I came to be on this podcast. I was just out there. I opened a show for Zach Wilkerson up in the DFW area,
Nice.
and you know, I just met Steve, you know, and it was like we connected. That night was a good night. I connected with folks, but I'm good for about 25 or 30 minutes, you know, and then I'm gonna lose you probably. We're gonna have a good time for that 25 to 30 minutes, but then I'm just not transcendently charismatic or evolved enough to keep you there with me. And but you get guys like Dean Johnson or like, and yeah, sure, he's a misogynistic piece of shit fuck, but Ryan Adams, uh you know, I was 19, I was impressionable. Dude, that guy was fucking crazy. You'd show up to a show and like Whiskey Town, they would just get in a fucking fight, a fist fight on stage. You know, just out of nowhere. And I'm sneaking in the bar. I'm like 19 years old, you know, just trying to go and see something, you know, and just getting a fist fight. Or like one time I was at a show where he was like playing all this like slow stuff on piano and shit. And there's people were just talking in the background. He got all pissed off and was just like, fuck y'all, and just played rock and roll songs for the rest of the night. Or like some guy was heckling him and he was like, hey, how much did it cost to get into this show? And they were like, $12. He just walked out, took $12 out of his wallet, threw it in the guy's face, and was like, there's your money back, get the fuck out. You know? But that guy could just pull you in a moment and make you feel like you were like one with him. Like you were there, you know? I I think that's a rare thing. To do it with a band, I mean, I play with some really fantastic steel players. I play with really great players. I'm the luckiest lad in Houston. I swear to God, I get to play with world class folks, and that's one thing, because they're gonna pull it in. They're gonna, you know, you hear a Transcendent band, it's just to experience it off stage or on stage is like, oh, there's nothing like it in the world. I surfed, I rode dirt bikes and bicycles and tried every kind of thrilling thing in the world I can find, you know, cars. But like being on stage with a really whip ass band, there's just nothing there's nothing like it on the earth. And
Yeah.
so but to do it as a songwriter, and that's like your boy BJ. That's what he brings to the table. That guy's transcendent as a songwriter. He can pull you in. He can take you there with him, and then when you leave, it's that clean, uplifted feeling that you get. That's just not like anything else. I mean, you could maybe describe it as like a runner's high, or just all them damn endorphins and dopamine kicking into your system all at once. And as a human, that's the bee's knees. You know, that's why
Yeah.
we drink. That's why we go out and do the thing. So you know, I think, how do we connect in a real way as humans that creates that thing all the time, and like,
Yeah. And once you experience it, it's like all these, you know, the people were like, why do you go all these shows? Why do you drive 3 hours? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And it's like, just go to a show, and like, you don't even have to like know what you're looking for. Like, it'll find you. Like, I just remember yeah, I thought it was cool to put my name on a list. Never had my name on a list. I didn't even know what that meant. Just walked up to the guy at the window and he's like, yeah, we didn't get the list yet. Just go. I'm like, oh,
you
sweet. You know, like,
didn't even get the satisfaction of
I
actually being
know.
on the list.
I was
He
like,
was like, yeah,
okay.
yeah, I believe you. But no,
Yeah.
can you just check it so I can feel like
Yeah. Yeah. Just, this is the first time, but okay, cool. Apparently I could have done this every show, you know.
Yeah.
but, but yeah, and you just stand around, and you just, next thing you know, you're like, wow,
Dude, we was in South by Southwest, and we were playing Arlen Studios. There's this cool company called Keystone Connect, and they do a lot for just all sorts of artists, man. They're connected with Summer and a few other. We play with Tyler James Kelly, fantastic songwriter. Um, but they do this big thing for South by Southwest at Arlen Studios, which is like this again one of those places where somehow just this magic thing, this aura has soaked into the wood panels all across that place, and you see the gear they have in there and all the stuff, and it's just like wow, this is like one of those places where so many great records that I've heard have come out of. It's just it's the sanctuary, and so we show up to the place and we do that there, and uh you know it it it's like one of those things where you're there and you're doing the thing. God damn it. I lost my train of thought again, man. I
just
don't
like
even know. I
the
don't
the,
even,
the
I don't, e-
mystique
I
of
don't
being in a
even,
place like that.
I don't even know why.
Dude, I do that too. But it's fun. Like I love when the guys from Texas they come up north,
Yeah.
and especially like in Philly, it'd be standing out on the street and they're like, "Where's a good place to get cheesesteak?" And I'm like, this is Independence Hall, the birth of the country. They signed the Constitution over there. I said these blocks we're standing on. I'm like, it's funny is every that you come to Philly, you want to get a cheesesteak, and then they're like, "Where did Rocky run up?" I'm like, that art museum has priceless pieces of
And
art.
priceless antiquities
Yeah,
from a different age. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just funny. And they're like, "Oh no, we're gonna go see that too." I'm like, "Mm-hmm." Like after you eat that cheesesteak, you're just gonna want to like go back on the bus, get in your bunk, and sleep for 3 days. Especially if you've never had like a full Philly cheesesteak, but yeah, like, and it's easy to forget. I get it. Like when you're walking down the same streets and everything, and especially like up in the Northeast, everything's so old.
Yeah.
Of like
Yeah.
colonies were up here, and then it expanded out. So there's a lot of cool old stuff that gives off that same with the history, and
Well,
there's a
yeah,
lot of
that's like
battlefields.
going to New York or any of that stuff. As an American, like, why wouldn't you want to go there? It, it,
Yeah,
it's like
Ellis
I
Island.
will tell you this, like the first that I like spent some time in Providence, a few months in Providence, and I showed up on the 4th of July, and nobody does the 4th of July like New England. It just doesn't exist anywhere else, like it does there. It lives there. It's alive still.
Yeah,
I think that's sometimes when you go to the Northeast, that's what you get when you think about like New York, Delaware, Rhode Island, up into New England and the Northeast in general. It's just, or even just going to DC or
yeah,
Baltimore or anywhere along there. Plus, I mean, just the whole Eastern Seaboard. You think about like our history as a country, and where it centers around those things, and then expanded west. I don't know, man. That area is special. You get a feel for like the history, like being in Massachusetts or any of those places where those things happen. I think we lose a connection with our history a lot.
yeah,
Again, I think that's why it's so good to preserve those things. Like I have a buddy who's really good at like historical songwriting. You know, that is not something that I possess. I am no damn Johnny Horton. Like I can't write these historical songs, but he really writes a lot of them about the West. And he has this song called Silver Valley. His name's David Miner, and man, some guys can just take a piece of history encapsulate it in a song and put it out there, and he acts like it's nothing. He's like, well, the story's already written. I'm like, yeah, but you literally crafted this thing from this structure. That's like working in form as a poet, you know? It's one thing to write free verse. It's another thing to write a sonnet or a villanelle or you know, to work within the form of what the thing is. So yeah, man, that whole area just carries that kind of that sizzle, you know?
Yeah, it's wild, especially up there. Like they still have steps in houses that are designed so witches can't walk up. So while you were sleeping,
Right, man, it's fucking
like
weird,
stay.
dude. I love it.
Yeah, it's there's so much stuff, and you know, like you can go walk down the same streets where like Paul Revere just
Walk down, yeah.
yeah, and all those guys, and
Big
like
Ben Franklin was spawning all sorts of like children in all these buildings. Yeah, that's always crazy about Ben Franklin. He like 28 children or something like that. Okay, this is probably all untrue, and some fact checker is going to come along and dissuade everything that I just said about this. But yeah, like Ben Franklin was a dirty old man, dude,
yeah,
and also a great diplomat. But you know, he's just a dirty old man.
yeah. Well, they found like bodies in his basement, right?
Dude, Ben Franklin got some skeletons for sure on metaphorical, metaphysical, like all levels. Physical.
Yeah. Ah, there's this lightning storm outside. Let's go fly this kite with this key on it.
Yeah, man. Like it's interesting to like come at it and like we talk about like you know I got the album coming out in May, and it's like one of those things where I think you spend your lifetime writing your first real album,
Hmm.
right? You spend all that time, and then you're supposed to come out with something that's like equal or better than in a short amount of time afterwards.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah,
Like,
like I that's why sophomore albums generally are not that great. You know, because you think, okay, they come out with an album a year or 2 years after their first album, right? Whoever it is, and then they're about their fourth albums where they're like hit another good one. That's because they've had like 5 years between when they recorded the first album and the second one, and that's like 7 years worth of songs.
yeah, yeah, and back then, like there used to be like monster tours where
Oh
you,
yeah,
you could get your stories organically. Just you know, the universe doesn't always pave a, a
a
non-friction
clean
path.
path.
Yeah, so like organically, you could just a lot of times like sitting on a bench, not even waiting for a bus. Some people will just open up and tell you like some of the craziest, some like heartfelt, like it's been like one of the things that like blew my mind is I just sat
Yeah.
on a bus bench in Nashville. The amount of stories of who I was, it blew my mind. Were they real? Were they true? And there's this guy sitting down. He was like, "Yeah, when I was your age and I came in this town, I helped write this and I had this song." They'll tell you songs that
Oh,
they had.
Nashville's so wild, dude.
It
Like
was
that.
yeah, it was crazy. And I was like, man, I could sit on this bench, take notes, and have an album in a day. It just people they just wanted someone to listen to, and they may have been, they may have been gotten eaten up by the 10-year town or whatever they call Nashville, 10,
Man,
20 years.
the players in Nashville are so crazy because they'll be like, "Yeah, man. Oh yeah, you know what? I did play with Willie Nelson back in '83 for a tour." And you're like, "What? What do you mean you forgot about playing with Willie
Yeah.
Nelson on a tour? That's fucking ridiculous, man." You know, it's just like they just got this wealth of thing. It's fun though, man. Like I think one of the things about being kind of a little more traditional is I've gotten to meet a lot of like folks who have done those things before me, and yeah, it's always crazy to hear like players' stories. You know, like one of the guys that lives here around Houston area, he played with Waylon for a while. He played on the Grand Ole Opry, and he has all these I can't talk, but it has all these Roy Acuff stories.
Mm,
From like being on Opry days, and that's so wild to me because he was like 14 when he's playing drums on the Opry. You know,
that's crazy.
it's like to experience those things as they were happening. Uh, that's always wild. Or just the stories that circulate. Like a buddy of mine here, he plays piano with a band called the Broken Spokes. He's like one of their primary writers, and his dad played trumpet for Ray Price. So it's like you get all these like connection points to this world that existed. Plus, I mean, hell, we're all still earning the same rate they were in the '70s as musicians, and this is not far from the truth.
That's crazy.
It's, it's wild, man. Inflation did not help us out at
Yeah.
all. So I think it's different now than it was back then. Going out and earning a living, but it's the kind of place a person who really wants to strive for something of their own can make a place for themselves. Like, man, you were talking about recording cost of albums. I couldn't record my album for what I recorded for today, 20 years ago. That just did not exist.
Yeah.
To do what I get to do at this level for the dollar amount as an independent artist, it's really our golden age. We can go out and make our own way in life, create our own opportunities, and hell, create those opportunities for the others around us. Cut each other's songs, like in the great tradition. Like I know that on the next album I'll probably cut a couple of friends of mine's songs. I just
That's
think
cool.
they feel and they speak to where I'm at and where I was at when I was making that album, when I was writing those songs, and they should be a part of that menagerie. So just kind of creating that environment where we lift each other up.
Yeah.
It's hard out there, man, and that's all the more reason why like we just we gotta talk about each other. We gotta work together. We gotta write together. We gotta plan together. We gotta play together, and then create those opportunities to connect with the people around us and make a real thing. Not just the inglorious self promotion that kind of plagues what most people do as artists today.
Yeah. And yeah, and it makes, you know, what's good for the colony, it's good for the individual. When you
Exactly,
do
man.
it, it's
Yeah.
the way to be. Relationships, it's that's so huge because you never know. Like you get double booked here, and you put a thing on Facebook and be like, "Hey, man," like they may know somebody, or they may be like, "Man, we've been on a run. We're tired. My voice is tired. I'm gonna split a night and do this," and just everybody working together rather than like cutting everybody's throat just to what just
For
to get
what?
in. Yeah, it never plays
Hey, man.
off in the long run.
Yeah. The you got to look at the bigger picture. It, you can
Hmm.
earn $100 now, or you can earn 1,000 later.
Yep.
Like, really, really, the truth of it is like, again, it's just about your own personal work ethic a lot of times, and then finding people who want to work as hard as you do. Otherwise, like pulling the traces, you're only as weak as you're only as strong as the weakest person pulling in those traces.
Hmm.
So, how do you create a strong community around you that like edifies? And it's anything from open mic nights and encouraging those things and connecting other songwriters to each other to like sharing booking contacts and on some level, man, may I throw this out there, like financial transparency with other artists.
Yeah.
Hey, look, it's a communal business. Like it's all about like the relationships, genuine relationships that you develop with others. Genuine. I think that's the big thing. Those are the things that hold you over and last. I've been so fortunate to find so many people that share those ideals within this particular community of music. I can't speak to others. I don't know. I'm not involved in those, but amongst like the underground country Western scene, people are always there to help you out. They're always there to connect with you, and then it's also about like doing that for others. And it can't be a handout kind of thing.
Yeah.
It can't, you know. It has to be from a place of like you do this because it's principled, and I think that's so hard to find today. Is just like an idea of principles, and it's so hard to exist in the world without compromise. You know, so what are we doing to further those things as a community, as a mentorship to younger artists as well? I couldn't make it without you know all the all the folks that helped me along the way, and that provide that insight that I need. Like but my bass player, he's old school, old school country bluegrass player, and comes from a lot of roots in Nashville and things like that. And without Uncle Randy's school of country music and other stuff, I couldn't do what I do now. I had to learn somewhere. Everybody has to learn somewhere. So yeah, it's just me talking to younger songwriters, other artists, encouraging them, providing opportunities for them, providing opportunities for myself, providing opportunities for my peers. And those are all things that are a part of our obligation as the greater traditional construct of the artist.
Yeah.
As I see it,
And especially helping the new people also, it gives you a spark as well, because sometimes you just forget certain things and feelings you had when you first start doing it. That's like when people say, hey, you're good on guitar, it's a shame you probably don't give lessons. I'm like, I will absolutely, going back to the basics. Well, even if it's just, going over the strings again, you might be like, it just the hitting the basics every once in a while is it, because there's stuff you'll always forget or you always took for granted, and you may have been wrong this entire time. But you know giving someone, you might get someone advice and you'd be like, man, that's great advice. Well, hell, I haven't been doing it that way. I did take my own advice. Like, I just gave him great advice, but here I'm over here doing this. I just always think it's good to go back to, especially when someone, they have a wonderful talent, but they don't have any form. They have no way of knowing. Like, their parents may not know what to do. They have no knowledge of music, no knowledge of anything. They just know when their kid plays, people stop and go, where can I find more of your music? And to be able to tell someone, this is what we're going to do for you. And, we're going to show you, introduce you to some people, get you on a bill, you want to
yeah,
open up for
man.
us? It's
Well, it's
the
it's
way to
like
be.
you can't ask for people to do things for you.
Yeah.
What you really want is just the opportunity to do for yourself.
Yeah. That balance.
I think that is always the thing that you're chasing is the opportunity. And again, that comes down to several things. Like, I mean, if it wasn't for guys like Johnny Falstaff here where I'm at, guys who have done what I'm doing, been there before, who can say, hey, if I were you and in your position, I would do it this way. I did it this way last time. This and this happened. This is this is something you should consider. But also, it just the teachability, the learning from others. That's something you learn. And like I always say, man, nothing gives you like a value for or respect for experience like having some of your own. Once you get a little bit of experience, you start to understand its value.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like the things that we can pass on from what we learn. Those are things that really do truly lasting good because we're able to pass on. I mean, come on, man. We wouldn't be where we're at if we didn't have written language. That's what that shit's all about. It's just about passing on the idea to the next generation, the next generation, the next generation, so on, so forth. What we leave as our posterity, because like ultimately, like some of us don't get to be historical game changers. You know, I would say, as a matter of fact, most of those people are very, very rare. But a lot of us can influence the people around us who can become those people. And it's not in my lot to be like some great changer of things. That's not really my thing. you know? Like I don't think I have the discipline or the foresight or the other the aspects of that thing to truly make it. But I can help somebody have a little bit smoother path to
Yeah.
something. And if I can do that, that's it's all about that, man. Like we talk about raising children or create songs or all those other things, but what does it really boil down to is passing on that experience, that knowledge, that wisdom, those things that make our lives better, you know?
Yeah. And it's satisfying.
Yeah, it is, man. It
It
is.
feels good to be good.
Man, hey, if it didn't feel good to be good, none of us would be doing it. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Like, I don't believe in being truly altruistic. I'm not. You're not. We're not. As a species, that's okay. That's all right. What accomplishes the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people? That is truly altruistic, in that sense. But it's also self-serving. A harm against one is a harm against the whole. A harm against the whole is a harm against myself. Like it's all those like principles boiled down into one. And we can discuss them in a bunch of different religions or ideas or whatever, but they're just human principles that we can live by that help us navigate the world and make it less violent, less crazy, less whatever. You know, life is hard and traumatic. Let's
Yeah.
make it easier for us as a
Yeah.
as a species.
Yeah.
Hell yeah,
Exactly. Wouldn't that be great? Right?
yeah, man, yeah,
Yeah. Wouldn't dread waking up early to go to a job. And you're like, you know what? I got that safety net.
man. I always like to work. I just like to choose what I work at.
Yeah.
I think that's
I
always the
like that.
problem with the job, right?
Yeah. That sums it up. Clear and concise.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
But yeah,
so so what about country music brought you into the fold? Like you're not a big country guy to start with. Like what was the thing that like snapped it to focus to you as like, you know what, I connect with this, you know?
you know, I think what really helped was I always liked story songs, but I just never
Yeah.
liked the way they were delivered. Like
Uh,
there was a song, I think Dispatch the General. I think it was Dispatch the General.
oh, I know that song you're talking about.
Yeah, and
Girls in my 20s.
yeah, exact dude, yeah. And
Yeah.
of a Revolution or Crazy Game of Poker. I thought they were like cool and fun, but it just kind of was like I don't know, it didn't have that edge I was looking for. And then I heard uh it was funny, I used to always just say Cody Canada because
Yeah.
he was, not with Cross Canadian. I'll say because they're going back. Cross Canadian Ragweed. I heard that. It was I didn't sacrifice anything. Still got the heavy metal guitars, and you got the drums, you got the rock and bass, and
It's
but
red dirt
you're
for you.
yeah, Red Dirt, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You got something from it. You got a story. You had an experience. You know what I mean? Like the same. Look, we've been talking BJ a lot, but I told BJ, I said I've been listening to Metallica my whole life, and I don't know anything
Yeah.
about them from their music. And
Huh.
yeah, listen to Cross Canadian Ragweed and Cody Cannon and the Departed. I was like, damn man, like I wish I would have had that before. And all the Red Dirt guys and all those guys like Dylan Wheeler, Austin Mee, Giovanni, and just Cody West. And there's
Cody
so
West.
many more. Dylan, I remember I said Dylan Wheeler, like all those guys, like Colby Cooper. And I was like, man, I love, like it's like the one thing I saw Jason Aldean playing somewhere, and I just remember watching his guitar players play their EVH, their 5150. They're the third generation. They're some of the most the heaviest guitar amps you can ever play, and just they have crushing, searing tones, and they're playing on the green channel, which is the clean channel. And I'm
Right.
like, that's the
Right.
part I don't like. There's a couple other ones where, and like that kind of country, I hate having the struggle to hear the music. It's all like vocals are up here in the band. It's I've seen a couple of bands from like the 90s where like they're out in the spotlight and the band is like in like the shadows, And I was like, man, I can't get down with that. I want to stare at their fingers, see what they're playing, see what runs they're doing. But yeah, what got me in the country was hearing Red Dirt, and then I heard Pecos and the Rooftops, and I was like,
Yeah.
dude, this is a song I could definitely relate to, of like breakups. I've and then like, but their guitars are heavy. They're playing leads, and that's what got me in like the Texas country. And they're like, I remember people are like, it ain't experimental. That's what we're doing down here in Texas, where we got a harder edge, but we still have the traditional songwriting and messages and whatnot. And it's like you're not gonna find me toe tapping to achy breaky heart or
No, man, that shit sucks.
it's
No
yeah,
offense, Billy Ray. No offense.
yeah,
You know, if you're out there listening to this podcast, Billy Ray Cyrus, there's no offense.
it's
But I hated that song. I'm glad it did good for you, but I hated
yeah.
it.
And like I hate. She thinks my tractor's sexy, and
Oh yeah.
I was just like, here she comes with a basket of fried chicken. It's like, no, you know what I mean? Come on. And that whole
You
like,
mean you
all
mean Dirt Road and beer can songs? That's
yeah,
nah. You're
it's
hanging by a river, you're sitting on a tailgate, you're drinking beer, and you're talking about mama and football. It's like
yeah. I don't need.
that's all right, if
I
you're
can
into that. If
I
you're
can do
into
that
that.
myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
give me some intellect. Give me something. You know what I mean? But I get how
What? Well,
people
that's like
like.
hip hop, man. It's like if it's lyrically driven and it's insightful and it's like you hear the craft, that's one thing. But if it's just lifestyle hip hop, I can't get into it. Like
Dude,
lifestyle
yeah,
country or lifestyle rock and roll, this just doesn't mean anything to me. Let's talk about some real shit. You
yeah,
know, if you're talking about the existence of your life and what that brings to the table and how that is a contribution to humanity. And I mean, now there is a place for entertainment, right? When I got out of college, I stopped reading for intellect and started reading for entertainment, which still found its way back to intellect on some level. But like I just I started reading like fantasy and sci-fi all the time. Never read any poetry anymore. Just like was like, you know what? I'm just gonna read fantasy, read sci-fi, and I'm just gonna like get into the allegorical thing that it can create. And that's good enough for me. I think it's finding that thing that you need at the time too. You know
hmm
whatever that place is that speaks to you. So if it's rural pop, if it's Eric Church, or if it's Jewel, or if it's whatever, it doesn't matter. It's about the emotional connection that you find at the point, and I get that. I
yeah,
think we get so purist sometimes, and I am a traditionalist. I love my traditional honky tonk. I like my 4/4 shuffles. I like my dance hall music. I like my early to mid '70s country. I do, and '75 might be the greatest year for music production ever. I don't know, but I if Taylor Swift speaks to your soul, swift it up, baby. But it ain't exactly what speaks to mine. you
yeah,
know? And so, hey, just being willing to let something exist and not participate, and I think that's education. And
yeah, yeah. And I get that. And it's
yeah.
like, and when I put myself in other people, if you just, it's like the other day, my buddy said, "Who sung that song, The Final Countdown?" I said,
Oh,
"Europe."
yeah,
And he
Europe,
said,
baby.
and he goes, "Is there any other lyrics to that song?" Then it's the final. And I was like, "Yeah, there's verses,
Yeah.
and I get it.
We're leaving together.
Yeah."
Pew, pew, pew.
In his,
Yeah.
in his mind, he just remembers that, and you just get,
Yeah, like that the melody from the like synth part and that shit is so fucking just in your head.
yeah,
It gets
and
in there and you can't escape it,
yeah, and that's all he remembers. And I was like, I get that, like some you hear that, you just love that parts, and that's all your brain hears.
Yeah.
And I can see that with a lot of other things, with other parts of music and everything. And You know, some people it's fine. Some people like when their artist sounds like they're singing underwater, and not my cup of
Again,
tea.
hey, man, yeah, different strokes and all that shit.
Yeah,
But I think we get a little too purist sometimes. We get a little too hoity-toity about like, ooh, this comes from that, and this doesn't come from that. This is authentic. Like, what the
yeah,
fuck does authentic even mean, man? Authentic just means being true to who you are, what you like, do what you like. You know, like who
yeah,
gives a fuck what anybody else thinks about that? Because at the end of the day, man, are they paying your bills?
yeah,
Are they doing good things in your life?
yeah.
Do they contribute to you as a human being? Then I'm going to limit the influence of their opinion if not.
Yeah.
You know, it's
You got to sing it 1,000 times a year. You, you better like it.
you better like it. You better connect to it. It better be real when it comes out your mouth. And if it can't be, then it's time to move on. Not
Yeah.
everything has a continuous shelf life. There's plenty of things that I've written, hundreds of things I've written that never stood up. They didn't. They didn't last. They weren't. They weren't universal. Plus, man, I go back and read journals and stuff that I wrote when I was in my 20s, and I'm like, holy shit, what an asshole. But the second thing I think is like, my God, I just didn't have enough information to really know. The thing about it is we come from a generation where everything we do is not recorded. Look, my little niece, she's just born. From the time she comes out of the womb, she will be recorded. Every moment,
Hmm.
everything. And then you got the whole pop culture thing where we build these flat characters out of people and we stop letting them be round. We stop letting them be diverse. We stop letting them be complete people and we just make them into the militant black man, the flamboyantly gay man, the whatever that stereotype that we fall into, that we create for ourselves as an identity. Especially as young people, we do that, in our 20s when we're still trying to find who we are. We take on these one-dimensional avatars and we wear them like they're real me, and they're not. They can never encapsulate the complexity of what it means to be a human being, to have the diverse experiences, the genetic markers, the all the little tiny variables that make you the human that you grow into. And being married to that for the rest of your life, the unevolved 20 something year old that I was, Jesus Christ, I'm so glad nobody can hear or see or read the things that I fucking thought in my 20s. Nobody deserves to be subjected to that
Yeah.
sophomoric view of the world that just lacked perspective, lacked experience, lacked the humbling that life will just absolutely bring you for no other reason than it's life. And so I think we got to like stop holding everybody accountable for everything they've ever done and give redemption a chance again. Give
Yeah.
people a chance to be something more than what they were. Instead, we lock them into this one-dimensional form and then we hold them to that. And we see that throughout like all our common culture, whatever that is. I want people to have a chance to grow beyond their racism, to have a chance to grow beyond their juvenileness, to have the chance to outgrow their immaturity and their shittiness, and just come to discover that like, hey, the way I am is sucks. So I should change the way I am so I can have a better life, right? But instead, we lock people into these things. And
Yeah.
I think that's the other conflict that we have, where we don't live in the physical world anymore. The go into the store or the community around us. We isolate ourselves and create this faux world that just depends on how you picture yourself on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It, especially with, man, like, you don't really have to leave your house for anything.
Not anymore, baby. You just order it, it shows up at the damn door. Dude, I got the groceries delivered, man. They're sitting on the counter right now.
Yeah. You should just be
Like,
pizza and Chinese
that's
food. No,
awesome.
That's
Some parts
everything.
of it, I gotta say, I really love, man. I just hate going to like the store and battling the grocery store. You know, it,
Yeah,
it's cool to handpick your produce, but like at what great cost? You know,
exactly.
it's like what great cost, man. I got to go to that store and fight those
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
squeeze all the avocados myself. You know.
Yeah. Give me that worm. I'll eat it to not have to go there. I'm the
The
same
red-
way.
yeah, man.
But yeah, dude, we've been talking for like 2.5 hours.
I think we might be good, Bubba. I hate to hold you here any longer, but like I just really enjoyed talking with you today.
Dude, yeah, same here. I really liked because you never know. You never,
You never know, dude. It's the conversation roulette that we take when we go on a podcast,
Yeah.
whether the podcast or the podcaster. I guess and but you know what I mean, man. So
But yeah, it was cool. I definitely had a good time talking to you, and yeah, I hope people listen to your music because
yeah,
like
me too, man.
I was listening to it. I'm like, man, like even like you did the Willie Nelson Whalen
The
man.
cover with my boy Tweak.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even yeah, South Texas Tweet. Even like
yeah,
the softness of the kick drum was like very cool, and I'm like, you don't hear that. And then like on your other song, it was like that it had that Whalen phaser sound that really loved
yeah.
on the guitar.
Highlights.
It's really cool that you know people like
Man,
you are
a lot of
preserving
that's
it.
Kevin. That's a lot. That's a lot of that's Kevin. Me and Kevin had a Sunday gig. We're just doing like some trio stuff at a place called Dan Electro's Guitar Bar here in Houston, and we went to this place called the Burger Joint. It's like over on Shepherd, and we're just sitting there talking. He's like, "You and Tweak should cut a single together," you know. And it's like I was like, "Yeah, but what? You know, what are we gonna cut?" And we started talking about stuff, and he suggested that song. So just one day
That's
we
cool.
went down to Wolf Island over there in Dayton, Texas, out on the farm, and like just we went fishing, picked up a stray dog. There's like some little dog hanging around that Tweak was like, "Well, I'm gonna call him Tater," you know. He was like hanging us with. There's like a little farm pond out there, you know. We just went out there. I was smoking these boys fishing. They'll tell you this is true. It's true. I did smoke them. But like we're out there fishing and we go in and cut this. We go hang out at some little place in Dayton, and get some burgers and play some buck hunter and steal a road sign on the way back, you know. But it was just like one of those whims where he's like, "Yeah, you should do this," and I was like, "You know what? Yes, let's do it." So, we just went in and cut it in the afternoon and just hanging out in the studio, just having fun, and like that's what it's about, man. It's about writing those songs with your friends and cutting them with your friends and playing with your hometown boys and like going out and doing our residency has just been so rewarding and so connecting to so many people uh, that it's what it's about, man. Like our
Yeah.
little bar is Big Top Lounge. It's based out of the Continental Club here in Houston, and you walk in and you're like, we're eye level with you when you walk in the place. There's no sign out front. You feel like you're in the private clubhouse. You feel like you're
Yeah.
in the secret bar, and there's
Speakeasy.
just shit on the wall from the 70s, and it's like, no Doors songs are allowed. That's a Pete Gordon rule. He owns the place. So, I never play Whiskey Bar or anything else. But it's just like it's that connection to the real world that we lack so much, and that we roll into virality and we roll into all these consumer ideas of what music is, when really, folks, it's just a primal exurgence of your soul into what is life. And so, yeah, man, like, and that's what I like about this podcast. That's some of the things that I heard when I listened to it, was artists talking about like how they connect to the world, how they connect to each other, how
Yeah.
they connect to their community. And you build that into what it is to be human. It starts to take on the greater scope of things that we call universality. And that's what we're really seeking in your art is universality, the connection to the human. I don't know, what do you want to call it? You call it anything you want. The cosmos, the fucking uh hive mind, whatever you want to fucking call that shit, the thing, like
Yeah.
the little thing that we all have as humans. It's like boop, boop, and you cerebrally connect without ever having a conversation about its body language, its shared history, you know so yeah, man, like, what are we doing? What are we getting out there and mixing it up? And I think that's kind of what I liked about the podcast. When Steve told me about it, I went through and listened to the episodes. Was like, yeah, that's the thing. That's the
Yeah.
thing we're all talking about. That's the thing we're all searching for. That's the thing that I do this whole thing for, that you do this whole thing for. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
you know
Well, I'm glad you came on.
Hell yeah, man. All
Because
right,
now
brother.
now people can say the same thing about you. Be like, hey man, I want to be on it because I heard Chris on there.
Man, if my conversation encourages people to go out and pursue a path for themselves, like I said, man, I'm just an average fucking dude. I don't come from anything special. I don't, there ain't nothing like earmark about me in a sense, but like, I'm a fucking human, and we share this shit together. So go out and share yourself, share that experience, be vulnerable,
Yeah.
make music, make art, make friendships, and whether that's like just being from a curation standpoint, like DJs and things that are going out finding those deep cuts, ripping all those 45s that I comb through endlessly, looking for stuff like "When Loving Me Was Wrong," like those old songs that like speak to you, that you connect to personally, like I did to that thing. Again, Kevin Skirlo sent me that one, but you know, it, and then like just even down to the community of it. Brennan Lee, who, if you don't know who she is, everybody should check her out. She's fantastic artist, great writer, great writer, like just awesome, amazing musician. She just hopped on, did the harmonies for free for me. Just hopped on and did it because she knew it needed to be done, and we were trying to make something greater than ourselves, greater than the thing, like the preservation of something beautiful, and so like that is a part of being a part of the tradition, and that's what we have to encourage in our younger artists and ourselves as older artists, and even beyond me myself, the people who encourage me and mentor me. So it's like it's that whole mentorship all the way down. The Greek model for
Yeah.
learning art and philosophy and things. Like let's go back to that, the student and the master. I think I long for that thing, and I think other people do too.
Yeah.
Like the
Knight and Squire.
mentorship. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. It
Well,
that
fucking hell, man. We did the thing, didn't we?
we did the damn thing.
Brother, I swear to God, I'm down to the last little bit of the bottle. We did it all the way, man. Like, I didn't know if we get there, but, we started at whole and we finished it almost complete. And that's about as good as they asked for, man.
Yeah. Love it.
Hey, brother, I'm looking forward to hanging out with y'all again in a few weeks.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, man.
but, dude, man, I gotta send you the record, like, so you can at least just get a listen to it and
Okay.
whatnot.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's
definitely.
out soon anyway, but still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, brother, I guess that's it. I guess I got to just wait till this whole dang shebang downloads, huh?
Yeah.
I think we getting ready to cook dinner over here in the Seymore household.
Oh, there you go. But yeah, man. Thanks for hopping on.
Man, thanks for having me. It is a pleasure.